Chapter 1999. One had to know that the other islands were only at level 3. Even the few islands that he had helped earlier had only just been upgraded to level 4. Now he saw the 5th level of the blue protective array. At the same time, only those inside could see the color of the array. Those outside could not see it. That was why he only noticed it now. Senior brother, we want to pass the 6th level of the Golden Feather Island barrier. Can you help us? Yixian smiled faintly and said slowly, the 6th level of the Golden Feather Island barrier. The young man shuddered. He could not even pass the 5th level, let alone the 6th. The 6th level was filled with 10,000 half-Heavenly Lord Realm sea beasts. Even a Heavenly Lord Realm expert would find it difficult to pass. Are you kidding me? The young man shouted angrily and left. This was just a small interlude. Yixian and Huazhan did not care. They were waiting for the reward from the Golden Feather Palace. Huazhan had promised to give the reward of the 5th level island to Yixian. They would share the reward of the 4th level island. After all, without Yixian, they could not even reach the 4th level, let alone the 5th level. Previously, Huazhan had estimated that with his current situation, it would probably take him another 10,000 years to pass the 4th trial. As for the 5th level, he did not know how long it would take. But now they could enjoy the 5th level island in advance. Their leveling speed would be explosive. Yixian returned to his residence and prepared to cultivate in seclusion. He estimated that when he received the 5th level island, he would be able to reach the half-Heavenly Lord realm. During this time he would not have to worry about cultivation resources. However, half a day later, Master of Kanglan Island, come out. Another roar rang out, landing in everyone's ears. Yixian and Huazhan went out to take a look. They saw that the young man who was beaten away had returned with a long-haired man. Who hurt my little brother? The long-haired young man stared at Huazhan and the others and asked. This was how the world worked. Once you hit the small one, the big one would come out. Hearing this, Yixian immediately rode out on Black Horn and said, It was me. Senior brother, are you thanking me for teaching him a lesson for you? You're courting death. Without another word, the long-haired youth charged towards Yixian. On the way here, he had heard from his younger brother that there was a strange black dragon whose strength and realm differed greatly. Looking at it now, that was indeed the case. In an instant, Blackhorn and this 6th grade half-Heavenly Lord realm expert began to fight. Now that Blackhorn was a 2nd grade sacred venerate, even with the heart of the demon dragon, he could at most fight against a 4th grade half-step heavenly monarch. Facing a 6th stage half-heavenly monarch, it could only take a beating. Luo beat him up. Yixian immediately ordered Blackhorn to retreat and summoned Luo. Luo had already broken through to the half-step heaven monarch realm, and had so many 10,000 beast elixirs to improve her body constitution. Her strength was not to be underestimated. Most importantly, the heart of the demon dragon had turned into a suit of flowing light armor on her petite body. Luo's strength suddenly skyrocketed, and at the same time she gained the ability to conceal herself. What? The long-haired youth was shocked. He, a 6th grade half-heavenly monarch, was actually being suppressed? One should know that he was an elite disciple of the Golden Feather Dojo. He was strong enough to pass the 5th stage of the Golden Feather Island pass alone. What's wrong with this person? How can he have such a skill? The long-haired youth could not understand and continued to fight. However, in a short while, he was blasted out of the protective array of the island. Then Yixian, the vice island master, quickly controlled the protective array of the island and blocked him. Senior brother, don't think that you can be superior to others just because you have a high realm. Let's go. Yixian said slowly. They were still in the territory of the Golden Feather Dojo. Otherwise, this long-haired youth and his younger brother would have been dead. All right, just you wait. The long-haired youth shouted angrily, and then left with his stunned younger brother. When Huazhan and the others saw this scene, they were shocked. That's so scary. Miss Luo can even send a 6th grade half-heavenly monarch disciple flying. Who is brother Yixian? Huazhan and the others were puzzled. However, Kanglan Island had offended a disciple. Sure enough, the other party was still holding a grudge and was not going to let Kanglan Island go so easily. The next day, rumble. A series of loud noises alarmed everyone. Yixian raised his eyebrows and hurried out to take a look. he found that the protective array of the island was under attack by sea beasts. The sea beasts are attacking. Everyone quickly. Huazhen's voice was heard. However, in the next moment someone said, Senior Brother Hua, the sea beasts that are attacking the protective array are at least half-heavenly monarchs. What? Huazhen was shocked. Kanglan Island had been established for many years, but this was the first time they had encountered a half-heavenly monarch sea beast. When he went to take a look, he was right. Moreover, there were mid-level half-heavenly monarch sea beasts. What was going on? There's no need to look anymore. It must be the sea beasts that the person from yesterday drove here. I'll take care of them. Yixian immediately sent a message to Huazhen. Then he summoned the old tree Luoluo and Black Horn. At the same time, a system notification sounded in his mind. Ding! The host has triggered a random task. Protect Kanglan Island. If the protective array of the island is breached, the task will be considered a failure. Hearing this, Yixian's eyes were filled with killing intent. He had triggered a random task. Not bad. Immediately he ordered everyone to kill their way out. Meanwhile, he went to the edge of the protective array of the island. Ding! The protective array of the island is damaged. Do you want to repair it? Yes. Yixian replied immediately. Then, he asked the immortal-level devouring system to repair the array. Otherwise, they would not be able to withstand such a powerful attack. Old Tree, Black Horn, the Sword Celestial's doppelganger, and Luoluo, who was wearing the flowing light armor, had all rushed to the protective array of the island and started killing. Fortunately, the sea beasts were at most level 6 half-heavenly monarchs. Otherwise, even the level 5 protective array of the island would not be able to withstand it. At this time, the geniuses on Kanglan Island could only watch the battle outside blankly. There was nothing they could do to help. There were at least a few thousand sea beasts. If this had happened before, it would have been enough to destroy this new island group. Luoluo led Black Horn and the others to kill the sea beasts continuously to reduce the pressure on the protective array of the island. At the same time, Yixian was also repairing the protective array of the island. At this rate, the protective array of the island should be able to hold on until all the sea beasts were killed. At this time, in the sea area far away from Kanglan Island. Let's see what you can do. Welcome the baptism of the sea beasts. The long-haired young man's eyes flickered. He did not think that Yixian and the others could survive this wave of sea beasts. After all, he had chased away a sea beast king. Chapter 2000. Oh, the sea beast king is finally here. The long-haired young man raised his eyebrows as he sensed a powerful aura approaching Kanglan Island. Although the sea beast king was only a 6th-stage half-heavenly lord, it was much more powerful than the average sea beast king. Luoluo, who was fighting outside Kanglan Island, also sensed the aura. She immediately sent a message to Yixian. Damn it! There's another sea beast king. Sword Immortal's clone, go and kill it. Yixian immediately shouted. All they had to do was lure the sea beast king away or kill it when it approached Kanglan Island. Unfortunately, the sea beast king was very angry. It ignored the Sword Immortal's clone's attack and headed straight for Kanglan Island. Yixian felt that they were attracted by something. No matter what, they had to fight. Luoluo, take care of that sea beast king first. Yixian immediately shouted. Wei Zhentian turned into the beast god bell and suppressed the sea beasts on one side. Although the streamer armor could increase Luoluo's combat strength, the beast god bell was more useful in this situation. After all, they were guarding Kanglan Island, not exterminating the sea beasts as soon as possible. Unfortunately, this group of sea beasts came in a menacing manner. In addition, this sea beast king wasn't weak. With Yixian's repair of the island's protective formation, its defensive ability had been reduced to 20%. It seemed that there was a high chance that they would break through. I can only use the time reversal skill to go back in time and kill some of the sea beasts first. Yixian thought to himself. However, if he did that, he could not guarantee that he would not trigger a random task. Therefore, he had to wait until he failed the task. However, when the defensive power of the island's defensive power was reduced to 10%, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky. Bastard, how dare you attack the island of the Golden Plume Dojo? You're courting death. A loud shout was heard. Then a cold light pierced through the sky and killed the sea beast king in an instant. So powerful. Everyone was shocked. They turned around and saw an old man in an elder's robe. He killed all the sea beasts with just a wave of his hand. His strength had shaken everyone's hearts. He was so strong that it was explosive. With his appearance, Yi Xian's random mission was also completed. Ding! The host has completed a random mission. The reward is a chance to fuse with a magic treasure. When the system notification rang out, Yi Xian's eyes lit up. It was really good that he could get what he wanted. At that moment, Yi Xian was taking advantage of this opportunity to fuse the flowing light armor and the phantom spirit robe. Ding! The flowing light armor and illusionary spirit robe are beginning to merge. Ding! Fusion of powers. Yi Xian hurriedly took a look and discovered that the product of the fusion was called the Void Spirit Godly Armor. This Void Spirit Godly Armor not only had the effect of energy immunity, but it also had a powerful defensive ability. At the same time, it also had the effect of invisibility. In addition, there was also a new skill called Ethereal Transformation. After activating it, he would be invincible for 1 second. Strong. He was so strong that he could explode. Just now, if Luo Luo had worn this Void Spirit Godly Armor, she would have been able to easily kill the Sea Beast King. What happened? At that moment, the elder in the inner field asked. Elder, we were attacked by the sea beasts for no reason. Yi Xian immediately walked out and clasped his hands together. For no reason, it's unlikely. The new islands of the Golden Plume Training Hall have not been attacked by such high-level sea beasts many times. Someone must have ordered them to attack. The elder in the inner field raised his eyebrows and glanced around. He shouted sternly. Luoan, what are you doing here? This name was slightly unfamiliar to them. However, when they followed the elder's gaze, they saw the long-haired young man. Young Elder Yang, I'm just passing by. The long-haired young man, Luoan, said in a trembling voice. Why don't you get back to your training? Elder Yang shouted sternly again. In the next moment, Luoan quickly turned around and disappeared into the horizon. After he left, Elder Yang looked around and said, Did any of you have a grudge with Luoan? Huazhan and the others looked at each other. Huazhan said. Senior brother Luoan's younger brother visited Kanglan Island and said. Huazhan began to describe the situation. Elder Yang understood after listening to him. This group of sea beasts was probably ordered by Luoan. He must have placed something on Kanglan Island that attracted the sea beasts. I understand now. The elder in the inner field did not say much. He tossed an interspatial ring to Huazhan and said, Inside this ring are all the rewards for upgrading the island to a grade 5 island. Thank you, Elder. Huazhan and the others immediately expressed their gratitude. By the way, did you manage to pass the 5th stage with someone else's help or? The elder in the inner field could not help but ask. It's all thanks to Yi Xian. Someone immediately replied. Previously, the elder in the inner field also found it unbelievable. However, he believed that they had hired someone else. However, after checking Kanglan Island, he found that the people on the island were all disciples from ancient countries. They did not have the financial resources to hire someone else. Yi Xian. The elder in the inner field followed everyone's gaze and finally noticed Yi Xian. It's like this. I tamed a few saint beasts and they all transformed into human forms. That's why I brought them here. Yi Xian said. After hearing this, Elder Yang narrowed his eyes and looked at Luo Luo, Black Horn and the others. Their aptitudes were all top-notch. However, if he knew that Yi Xian could fight opponents 2 realms higher than him, he would probably accept Yi Xian as his disciple immediately. Your aptitude is not bad. I will report this matter later. Perhaps an elder will accept you as his disciple. Elder Yang said. Thank you, Elder Yang. Yi Xian thanked him. Then Elder Yang left. Yi Xian did not have much interest in accepting a disciple. Yi Xian, this is yours. After Elder Yang left, Huazhan threw the interspatial ring to Yi Xian. There was a large amount of heavenly treasures in it. It was enough for Yi Xian to break through to the half-heavenly Lord realm. Yi Xian did not refuse and accepted it. This matter was considered to have come to an end. However, the long-haired young man, Luoan, had commanded the sea beasts to attack Kanglan Island. This matter could not be settled so easily. Soon Yi Xian broke through to the 8th stage Holy Emperor realm. Old Tree and the others reached the third stage Holy Sovereign Realm. Their strength had improved. It was also on this day that a person suddenly came looking for him. Kanglan Island, where is Yixian? An unfamiliar voice entered Yixian's ears. Upon hearing this, Yixian immediately leaped into the air. He realized that an advanced half-heavenly lord was looking for him. Senior brother, what's the matter? Yixian asked. Chapter 2001. Accept me as a disciple? Upon hearing this, Yixian narrowed his eyes slightly. It seemed like this matter couldn't be avoided. However, it didn't matter. After all, he would enter Golden Feather Infield sooner or later. After all, he had to seek revenge on Luoan and He Jian. He then bade farewell to Huazhan and the others and left with the young man. The people on Kanglan Island revealed envious expressions. To be accepted as a disciple by an elder was considered a meteoric rise. Yixian followed behind the young man and left Kanglan Island before flying to Golden Feather Island. Golden Feather Island was also known as Golden Feather Infield. This was where Golden Feather Training Hall's elite disciples and elders lived. My name is Bai Chan, and I'm Elder Luo's second disciple. I'm already a 9th stage half-step heavenly lord. If nothing goes wrong, you will be my junior brother, said the young man. Greetings, senior brother. Yixian hurriedly greeted him. The young man nodded slightly and said, by the way, junior brother He Jian seems to be from Kanglan Island as well. Do you know him? He Jian? Upon hearing this name, Yixian couldn't help but raise his brows. How could he just know this name? He Jian? You can say that I know him. Yixian nodded slightly. Oh, this junior brother He Jian has pretty good aptitude. It's said that he has a soul-devouring physique that allows him to break through by devouring other people's souls. However, after he was accepted as a disciple by Master, he has been in seclusion and has never appeared, said Bai Chan. Soul-devouring physique? Never heard of it. Yixian shook his head. No matter what, he had to get rid of this hidden danger. Otherwise, he didn't know when the other party would plot against him in the future. Bai Chan soon brought Yixian to a palace. In Golden Feather Training Hall, anyone at the elder level could build a palace and take in disciples to pass down their legacy. Along the way, Bai Chan explained some things to him. Yixian also knew that Elder Luo had already taken in 9 disciples. He was the 10th. The 9th disciple was He Jian. After a while, Bai Chan brought Yixian to Elder Luo. He was a white-haired elder. Master Yixian is here, Bai Chan said respectfully. All right, you may leave. Elder Luo waved his hand, and Bai Chan retreated. Then Elder Luo's gaze landed on Yixian. He gave the latter a strange look. Are you willing to take me as your master? Elder Luo asked. This disciple is willing. Yixian answered directly. Since they were already there, they naturally had to agree. Otherwise, they would be angering Elder Luo. One had to know that the elders of the Gold Plume Dao field were all at least Heavenly Monarch realm experts. This was not something a half-step Heavenly Monarch could compare to. Alright, then you will be my 10th disciple. Take these things and use them first. If they are not enough, we will talk about it later. Without hesitation, Elder Luo threw an interspatial ring to Yixian. Thank you, Master. Yixian replied. Alright, you can leave first. There might be a mission in the next few days. When the time comes, you can go out with the other senior brothers to gain experience, Elder Luo said. Yes. After replying, Yixian left. Bai Chan then arranged a residence for Yixian. However, after Yixian left, Elder Luo's eyes kept flickering. Yixian, you definitely won't guess who I am. Humph, how dare you kill my mistress? See if I don't kill you? Elder Luo thought to himself. If Yixian heard this, he would probably be scared half to death. He had killed He Jian's mistress. When did he kill Elder Luo's mistress? Unfortunately, Yixian didn't know this. At this moment, Yixian had already arrived at his residence and settled down. After a while, someone came looking for him. It turned out to be his senior brothers. Junior brother Yi, we will set off for training the day after tomorrow. Prepare yourself, a burly youth said to Yixian. Yes, senior brother. Yixian nodded. However, he saw a familiar face behind the burly young man. Luoan. Why is this guy here? Wait, Luoan, Elder Luo, could it be? Yixian's body trembled when he saw Luoan. Could this Luoan be Elder Luo's son? Humph, Grandpa told me to kill you casually. Let's see how you survive this trip. The corners of Luoan's mouth curled up slightly as he thought to himself. Yixian didn't expect Luoan to be Elder Luo's descendant. In that case, the other party might very well attack him. However, since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. He could also take revenge for what happened back then. However, he had another goal now, to find Hejian's whereabouts. He only hated himself for not using the death warrant to mark Hejian that day. Otherwise, it would have been much easier to find him. After informing Yixian, his senior brothers left. Luoan did the same. Yixian ignored them because his senior brothers were only 6th and 7th grade half-step heavenly lords. They were nothing. If they dared to attack him, they would be courting death. 2 days later, his senior brothers formed a team and prepared to set off for the trial. This team was led by 3 7th grade half-step heavenly lords. There were also 3 other half-step heavenly lords under their command. In addition, there was also Yixian as Saint Emperor. Of course, not all of these people were Elder Luo's direct disciples. They were just disciples under Elder Luo. Their status was 1 level lower than Yixian's. However, everyone had heard that although Yixian's strength was weak, he had several servants with outstanding battle prowess that could be of help. This is the mission given to us by our master. We are to eliminate a 9th grade half-step Heavenly Lord Sea Beast King. The leading disciple said, Senior brother, isn't it too strong? A 6th grade half-step Heavenly Lord disciple asked. No, the 3 of us have been there once. We can fight with that Sea Beast King. However, there were too many sea beasts around last time, so we retreated. The leading disciple shook his head and said. Hearing this, all of them heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that they could still do it. Immediately they began to fly. With the leading disciple leading the way, their speed was very fast. In less than 2 days, they arrived at a nest of sea beasts. Everyone be careful. Don't stray too far from us. After the leading disciple said this, he rushed into the nest of sea beasts. As for the others, they immediately followed him. However, on the way, Yixian noticed that Luoan and another 7th grade half-step Heavenly Lord disciple were secretly watching him. It seemed that these 2 people were up to some tricks. Junior brother Yixian, where are your fighters? Suddenly, a 6th grade half-step Heavenly Lord disciple asked. Oh. Yixian nodded. Immediately, he summoned the old tree and Black Horn. Then, he hid in Black Horn's body. Black Horn, a 3rd grade holy venerable, coupled with the heart of the demonic dragon, greatly increased his survival ability. Even if these people besieged him, they might not be able to get him out. Chapter 2002. Damn it! Luoan cursed in his heart when he saw Yixian hiding in Black Horn's body. Soon they saw the sea beasts and began to kill them. Blood soaked the entire nest of the sea beasts. Heart-wrenching cries could be heard. The sea beasts blocking their way were easily killed by the 3 leading 7th grade half-step Heavenly Lords. The people behind them could not do anything at all. After a while, they encountered the most powerful sea beasts, 3 8th grade half-step Heavenly Lords. However, they could not stop the group and were easily killed. Then it was time for the last 9th grade half-step Heavenly Lord Sea Beast King. The aura is not right. At this time, the leading disciple suddenly shouted. The group also felt that something was not right. They quickly quickened their pace. In the end, they saw that the 9th grade half-step Heavenly Lord Sea Beast King was trying to break through. As long as it broke through, it would be at the Heavenly Lord realm. It was not something that they could fight against. Quickly, the leading disciple shouted. Almost everyone used their trump cards. Devouring Dragon Roar. Yixian also asked Black Horn to attack. However, the opponent's realm was much higher than Black Horn's. The attack did not have much effect. However, the 3 7th grade half-step Heavenly Lords caused a lot of damage to the Sea Beast King. Roar! The sea beast roared and attacked the group angrily. Be careful. Although it did not break through, its strength is stronger than before. The leading disciple immediately shouted. Even Black Horn would not be able to intervene in a battle of this level. Therefore, Yixian quickly broke open the void in Black Horn's body and left the sea beast nest. The sword celestial avatar stayed behind. The Sea Beast King went crazy. The other sea beasts in the nest also came out in full force. In an instant they surrounded the group. "Kill our way out," the leading disciple shouted. He killed and retreated. They had seriously injured the Sea Beast King last time. They did not expect that the Sea Beast King would recover and become stronger. Therefore they could not stay for long. Bastard! Luoan originally wanted to kill Yi Xian, but he didn't expect himself to be in danger. He looked at Blackhorn's huge body and the countless sea beasts below and immediately raised his hand to attack. He was planning to kill Blackhorn and feed his body to the sea beasts. That way, there would be fewer sea beasts chasing after them. It was a pity. Bang! The attack landed on Blackhorn's body. Although it shattered Blackhorn's dragon scales, they recovered in the blink of an eye. Roar! The killing intent of the sword immortal avatar in his body flashed. This fella actually dared to attack him so brazenly. He was truly courting death. Immediately, the sword immortal avatar released Luo. At the same time, the demon dragon's heart transformed into the void spirit godly armor. Luo turned invisible and left Blackhorn's body, then attacked Luo and swish. A cold light flashed, Luoan's chest was heavily injured, and he fell from the sky. Junior Luo. The 3 7th stage half-step heavenly monarchs were scared out of their wits. If Luoan were to fall down like this, he would be devoured by the sea beasts below like hungry tigers. Damn it! The 7th stage half-step heavenly monarch who was in cahoots with Luoan cursed and was ready to rescue Luoan. Unfortunately, Yi Xian also included him in the must-kill list. Swish! Another cold light flashed. This 7th stage half-step heavenly monarch's head was directly thrown up, and then his body fell down. Both of them fell into the sea and were then devoured by the sea beasts. The rest of the people were shocked. How could a person who was alive and well just now become a corpse? Forget about the 7th stage half-step heavenly monarch. Luoan who fell first was Elder Luo's grandson. Once he died, the people on this trip would not be able to escape responsibility. Don't worry about it, let's go. The leading disciple gritted his teeth and rushed out of the sea beast's nest. Although they did not know how Luoan fell down at this time, their lives were more important. The remaining 4 people did not know that there was an invisible Luo beside them. After completing the task, Luo returned to Blackhorn's body, and then revealed her original form. However, flying above the sea, their speed was much slower than the sea beasts. "We can't escape counterattack." The leading disciple shouted angrily and rushed back. The other 3 people did the same. They could only fight head-on. Luo helped them. Yi Xian reminded. In the next moment, Blackhorn's mouth opened again, and Luo began to move. Luo was wearing the Void Spirit Divine armor, and her combat strength was terrifying. If she was to deal with the Sea Beast King, the others would not be in danger. As long as they could get rid of the surrounding sea beasts, it would be much easier. "Junior brother, why did you only call her out now?" The leading half-step heavenly monarch shouted. "Sorry, senior brother. Luo has to sleep for a period of time after every battle. She fought with senior brother Luo before, so she did not wake up," Yi Xian said with a guilty face. Everyone had heard that Yi Xian had a grudge with Luoan, so they did not ask again. They wanted to get through this crisis first. Luo, wearing the Void Spirit Divine armor, directly fought with the Sea Beast King, which stunned the other 4 people. "Ah, young master!" At this moment Luo suddenly shouted. Yi Xian saw that there was a mark on the back of the Sea Beast King. The Devouring Beast. "Oh my god, this Sea Beast King is the Devouring Beast." Yi Xian was also shocked. He did not expect to encounter the Devouring Beast on this mission. This trip was not in vain. "This corpse is mine." Yi Xian opened his eyes wide, and directly asked the sword celestial clone to summon a large number of immortal slaying puppets to fight. Soon those small sea beasts were dealt with. These senior brothers were slightly angry. They clearly had the strength to fight back, but because of Yi Xian they were chased and attacked. In the end, Luoan and another person died. Unfortunately, Yi Xian had also set his sights on them. At this moment, swoosh! Luo suddenly attacked the 7th grade half-step heavenly monarch. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. This 7th grade half-step heavenly monarch was severely injured. He could not resist Blackhorn's devouring, and was sucked into the devouring space. What? The other 3 people were shocked, but by the time they reacted, Luo Luo had attacked again. Not long after, the 3 of them were sucked into the devouring space by Luo Luo using the same method. Then it was Luo Luo's turn to fight with the Sea Beast King. Although Luo Luo was not a Dharma treasure, she was wearing the Void Spirit Divine armor, and with the recovery power of the immortal Phoenix bloodline, she should not be in too much danger. In addition, with the help of the old tree, Black Horn, and the others, the Sea Beast King was finally killed after a fierce battle. Chapter 2003. Ding! Host has obtained 3 Devour points. The system notification sounded. Yi Xian was stunned when he heard that. This Devour Beast was a high-level Devour Beast, and was worth 3 Devour points. What a great deal! Haha! Not bad. Yi Xian was overjoyed. This was a great adventure. With these 3 Devour points, Wei Zhentian could continue to fuse his Dharma treasure. He immediately spent 2 Devour points to fuse his Dharma treasure. Ding! 1,000 Poisonous Centipede Rope and Magistrate Brush fused. Ding! Necromancer Pot and 1,000 Beast Cauldron fused. When the 2 system notifications sounded, Yi Xian quickly checked his new Dharma treasure. The Necromancer Pot and 1,000 Beast Cauldron fused into the Spirit Refining Cauldron. Now the Spirit Refining Cauldron could smelt everything, including corpses and treasures. It could be used to refine spirit refining pills to increase one's strength. In addition, it had the ability to trap people. If one was trapped in it, they would be burned by the spirit refining fire. This Dharma treasure was like Taishang Latsu's alchemy cauldron. As for the 1,000 Poisonous Centipede Rope and Magistrate Brush fused into a Dharma treasure, it was called the Poison Deity Spike. The Poison Deity Spike would release a new poison every day. Today Yi Xian saw the Frost Poison. As long as the Poison Deity Spike pierced the opponent would be sealed in ice. This was not the main point. The main point was that the Poison Deity Spike had a deadly poison. If the Poison Deity Spike released a new poison, as long as it hit a person no matter their level, they would die immediately. The Poison Deity Spike was a divine weapon that could kill instantly. However, some of the poisons in the Poison Deity Spike could only be used once a day. Moreover, the chance of the deadly poison being used randomly was not high. Of course, the other poisons were also very effective. Yi Xian quickly experimented and found a level 7 half-heavenly Lord Realm Sea Beast. Poison Deity Spike, go! Yi Xian ordered Wei Zhentian to attack the Sea Beast in the form of the Poison Deity Spike. Poochie! With a crisp sound, the Poison Deity Spike pierced the Sea Beast's body. In the next moment, the Sea Beast turned into an ice sculpture. Ding! Host's killing intent points increased. A system notification sounded in Yi Xian's mind. The Poison Deity Spike had instantly killed his opponent. Not bad, let's try again. Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction. Then, he found an 8th-stage half-step Heavenly Monarch Sea Beast and killed it in an instant. Even the ordinary ice poison had such power. If he were to randomly obtain those powerful poisons, it would be simply heaven-defying. Following that, Yi Xian tested the Spirit Refining Cauldron. Indeed, it was more useful than the 10,000 Beast Cauldron. The refined pills could not only improve the physique and cultivation of the Yao, but could also be used by Yi Xian himself. However, Yi Xian's cultivation method was different, so his cultivation wouldn't improve. With this Spirit Refining Cauldron, Father and the other's strength will be able to soar all the way up. Yi Xian's eyes lit up. This Spirit Refining Cauldron was a cheat that allowed others to level up quickly. Of course, the prerequisite was that there was an endless supply of things such as natural treasures, weapons, corpses, and so on. Those people had been sucked into the devouring space, so Yi Xian collected them and used them on the Spirit Refining Cauldron. One by one, the Spirit Refining pills were refined and consumed by Luo Luo. Soon, Luo Luo's cultivation level increased to that of a 4th-stage half-step Heavenly Monarch. However, at this time, Yi Xian realized that something was wrong. The random mission to kill He Jian had actually changed. Now, the person he was supposed to kill was not He Jian, but Elder Luo Yang of the Golden Plume Palace. What's going on? Why did the random mission change? There was no notification at all. Also, why do I have to kill Elder Luo Yang? Yi Xian was a little confused. He quickly asked Wei Zhentian to search his soul. The next moment he was shocked. Elder Luo Yang was actually his master, Elder Luo. Heavens! The system wanted him to kill his master. What's going on? Why didn't I kill He Jian? Yixian was confused. Luo Yang was his master. Now that the system wanted him to kill Luo Yang for no reason, it was hard for him to accept. This time it was only Luoan who wanted to kill him. Otherwise, those senior brothers could have killed him on their way here. They would not have waited until now. However, Luo Yang had taken He Jian as his disciple. The two of them might have some shady dealings. System, I don't think you want me to kill Elder Luo Yang for no reason. I should go back and check. Yixian squinted his eyes and then flew toward the Golden Plume Palace. Although he had left some void positioning points along the way, he was about to break through. It was better to be careful. Coincidentally, when he returned to the Golden Plume Palace, he had already broken through to the 9th stage Holy Emperor, Old Tree Black Horn, and the others were 4th stage Holy Venerables. Even Luo's cultivation level had increased to that of a 4th stage half-step Heavenly Monarch. Now, Luo could probably fight with a Heavenly Monarch. However, before that, Yixian had to be careful. Therefore, he had used the time reversal skill to replay the scene of that day. He had absorbed Luoan, who had fallen into the sea and been devoured by the sea beasts, into the devouring space. This way, Yixian could 100% turn into Luo, and using the Mask of Truth. Grandpa, I'm back. Yixian used the Mask of Truth to disguise himself as Luoan, and sent a message to Luo Yang. What happened? Why didn't the others arrive? Luo Yang asked curiously. The Sea Beast King almost broke through to the Heavenly Monarch realm. It joined forces with the other sea beasts to kill us. My senior brothers were all devoured by the sea beasts in order to protect me, Yixian explained. I know. Luo Yang replied without much emotion. This made Yixian feel strange. One should know that the leading disciple was one of Luo Yang's favorite disciples. Now that he was dead, why was Luo Yang not showing any emotion? Something was wrong. Grandpa, I have something to show you. I got it from the sea beast's nest. Yixian continued. Come here. After a while, Yixian found Elder Luo Yang's residence and walked in. What is it? Elder Luo Yang asked. However, at this moment, Yixian suddenly showed a murderous look. Sword Immortal descends, flying immortal sword. Yixian turned into a ray of cold light and attacked Luo Yang. Luo Yang was shocked. He did not expect Luoan to suddenly attack him. Moreover, the move he used was not Luoan's. Fortunately, he was a Heavenly Monarch realm expert. How could he fall for it so easily? Bang! He struck out his palm and hit Yixian's abdomen, sending him flying. Yixian! Luo Yang recognized him immediately. He Jian, is that you? Chapter 2004. What are you talking about? Luo Yang narrowed his eyes. Stop pretending. What method did you use to seize Elder Luo Yang's body? Yixian asked. Hearing this, Elder Luo Yang was slightly taken aback. He smiled and said, You are indeed not simple. I didn't even expose myself in front of the sect master. How did you expose me? It was you. Yixian's eyes widened. He had been thinking that since He Jian could change his body, why couldn't he change his body again? Therefore, he guessed that He Jian must have seized Elder Luo Yang's body. That was why the system changed the mission to kill Luo Yang. That's right, it was me. He Jian grinned. You didn't expect this, right? I came from a low-ranked ancient country, but I managed to seize the body of a Lord of Heaven Realm Elder. Who else in this world can do that? So what if you did? You will still die in the end. Yixian said slowly. Since Luo Yang had admitted to it, the next goal was to kill He Jian. However, at that moment, ding! You have triggered a random mission. You will not be able to use time reversal. If you succeed in killing He Jian, the reward will be doubled. The system notification frightened Yixian. Previously, Yixian had wanted to use time reversal to find trouble with He Jian after breaking through to the next realm. But now, he couldn't use time reversal? What the F***CK? I don't care. Luo go. Yixian didn't care anymore. He summoned Luo and the other two to attack He Jian. Luo Yang's expression couldn't help but change when he saw this. He angrily shouted, How dare you, Yixian? I'm your master, yet you dare to attack me. You disgraceful brat. I'll clean up the sect today. His voice was deafening. Everyone in the palace probably heard it. Luo Yang had been worried that he couldn't find a reason to attack Yi Xian. Now, he could kill him openly. You think you can? Yi Xian's eyes flashed. In the next moment he was sent flying by Luo Yang. Fortunately, it was only the invincible sword deity clone that came to find Luo Yang. Otherwise, he would have been seriously injured. Of course, he couldn't use time reversal now, so the void spirit godly armor was naturally used on Luo Luo. Rumble. Both sides began to fight. The intensity of their attacks was so great that Luo Yang's residence was instantly reduced to ruins. When the disciples saw this, they couldn't help but sigh. Who are those people? How dare they attack Elder Luo Yang? Hey, isn't that Luoan? What? Luoan, the grandson of Elder Luo Yang? What kind of joke is this? A grandson attacking his grandfather? The disciples below immediately recognized him. At this time, Luoan's younger brother Luo Quan also rushed over and asked in surprise, "Grandfather, big brother, what happened?" "He's not your big brother. He's a traitor in disguise," Luo Yang quickly said. "After possessing Elder Luo Yang's body, you still have the cheek to say this? What a joke," Yi Xian said loudly. These two sentences were heard by everyone. Everyone felt a wave of disbelief. Both sides were saying that the other side was a fake. What was going on? However, this was the truth. Yi Xian used the real mask to disguise himself as Luoan, and He Jian used the method of possession to possess Elder Luo Yang's body. In other words, both of them were fake. At the same time, the commotion attracted the attention of the other experts. What's going on? Why did Elder Luo Yang attack his grandson? The elders who lived nearby rushed over and were puzzled. "Elders, this person pretended to be my grandson and tried to assassinate me," Elder Luo Yang said loudly. "I see." Everyone nodded and immediately attacked. In comparison, Elder Luo Yang's words were more authoritative. After all, Elder Luo Yang was a Lord of Heaven realm expert. The surrounding elders were also Lords of Heaven. They understood that not just anyone could possess a body. Immediately, the two elders attacked Luo Luo, Blackhorn, and the others. "Damn it, it seems like there's no other way this time. Let's go." Yi Xian, who was far away, had his eyes flicker. He directly let the sword celestial avatar absorb Luo Luo and the others into the devouring space, and then put away the unparalleled sword. When the sword celestial avatar disappeared, everyone lost their target. Fortunately, Yi Xian only went to look for He Jian after breaking through to be on the safe side. Otherwise, with Luo Luo's previous realm, she would be in danger. However, this time the truth was out. Next, Elder Luo Yang could only wait for death. "This time I can't do anything to He Jian. As long as I break through again, I can kill him," Yi Xian thought to himself as he looked at the scarlet kill character in the sky. He Jian definitely had to die. However, the time of his death would be different. Now that the two random missions were stacked, the earlier He Jian died, the better Yi Xian's reward would be. Therefore, Yi Xian prepared to go to the Golden Plume training ground again in a few days to kill Luo Yang. During this time, the Golden Plume training ground also sent out a large number of experts to search for Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian, who was wearing the Void Spirit Divine armor, could not be found unless a Lord of Heaven expert passed by. Very soon a few days had passed. Ding! Host has broken through to first rank Sacred Master. Ding! Infernal God Unicorn, Wei Zhentian, Sky-breaking Divine Ape, Devouring Black Scale Dragon have broken through to 5th rank Sacred Master. Yi Xian finally broke through to the next realm. Now, with these trump cards he should be able to kill He Jian. Immediately, he used the real mask to disguise himself as a disciple and returned to the Golden Plume training ground. "Luo Yang, wait for your death." Yi Xian's eyes flashed as he sneaked into Luo Yang's palace. However, when he arrived at Luo Yang's new residence, Luo Yang was indifferent. "Kill." Yi Xian immediately summoned Luo Luo and the others to attack together. Rumble. There was a rumbling sound in the Golden Plume training ground. Elder Luo Yang was killed in an instant under the attacks of so many people. Ding! The target of the Death Hunt order is dead. A system notification rang in Yi Xian's mind. Mission completed. However, when the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, he did not hear the system notification. What happened? Yi Xian looked curiously and found that the 2 random missions were not completed, and the time reversal skill could not be used. He Jian was not dead. The random mission had changed again. Now Yi Xian had to kill the master of the Golden Plume training ground, Wu Kong. Swoosh! At this time, a cold light came and hit Luo Luo directly. Fortunately, Yi Xian had asked Wei Zhentian to transform into the Void Spirit Divine Armor and put it on Luo Luo. Otherwise, this attack would have severely injured Luo Luo. What happened? Yi Xian turned around and found that a large number of elders of the Golden Plume training ground had appeared. Chapter 2005. Among them there was an extremely strong aura. This aura belonged to the sect master of Golden Plume Temple, Wu Kong. Now Yi Xian finally understood that He Jian had seized Wu Kong's body using the possession technique. Then he set up a trap here and waited for him to walk into it. Damn it, I was too careless. I didn't notice the change in the random mission's content. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. Fortunately, it was still the sword deity clone that entered this time. Yi Xian, you crazy disciple. How dare you kill your own master? Today, I will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and kill you, you evildoer. Wu Kong said to Yi Xian with a righteous look on his face. Previously, Luo Yang's body was still under his control. This time, he deliberately allowed Luo Yang to be killed by Yi Xian. He Jian, you're pretty good. After seizing Elder Luo Yang's body, you seized the sect master's body. Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh. When the surrounding elders heard this, they were slightly surprised. However, they didn't feel anything strange about Wu Kong, so they were a little suspicious of Yi Xian's words. This kid, how can he recognize me every time? Wu Kong was a little surprised. His possession technique was flawless. He directly devoured the opponent's soul and merged with the opponent's body. Regardless of whether it was the action or the aura, it was exactly the same. However, it was impossible for Yi Xian to recognize him like this. But this was the truth. Elders, let's join forces and kill this kid. Wu Kong shouted loudly. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding elders all made their moves. Terrifying attacks attacked Yi Xian one after another. If it was an ordinary person, they would be scared half to death when facing a Heaven Lord expert. However, Yi Xian and the rest didn't have the slightest fear in the face of such powerful attacks. Luo Luo kill. Yi Xian's eyes flickered. Although the surrounding elders were most likely innocent, they would definitely listen to the sect master's orders now that He Jian was in control of Wu Kong's body. Therefore they could only kill. Alright. Luo Luo responded. She actually charged forward while enduring all the attacks. The Void Spirit Godly Armor had an extremely strong defensive ability. Most importantly, it was immune to all energy attacks, including attacks like Sword Qi. To put it simply, those attacks did not harm Luo Luo in the slightest. How is this possible? He can actually block so many of our attacks? Wu Kong was extremely shocked. One should know that he had also made a move earlier. Even if it was him, he would not be able to block all of those attacks. However, Luo Luo was charging towards them as if nothing had happened. Impossible. However, this was the truth. All of you are courting death. Luo Luo shouted angrily and finally launched an attack. With the almost invincible Void Spirit Divine Armor, her combat power was unprecedented. Coupled with the immortal Phoenix bloodline, she was a perpetual motion machine. Wu Kong and the other 6 elders, who were all first-level heavenly lords, couldn't do anything to Luo Luo. Poochie! Luo Luo closed in on one of the elders. Luo Luo instantly exploded with power and took his head. The first heavenly monarch realm elder had fallen. In addition, Black Horn the Old Tree and the Sword Celestial Doppelganger had also launched their attacks. The Sword Celestial Doppelganger was truly invincible. With him around, Black Horn and the Old Tree could be resurrected immediately even if they died. Countless immortal slaying puppets and celestial eliminating arrows surrounded the elders and Wu Kong. Bastard, why is it so difficult to deal with? Wu Kong said angrily. If he had known earlier, he would have killed Yi Xian directly. If that was the case, how could he have ended up like this? I don't believe that I can't do anything to you. Wu Kong decided to personally take action and charge towards Luo Luo. Unfortunately, Luo Luo didn't want to fight him one-on-one for the time being. She would deal with the unnecessary people around first. Rumble. The battle on Golden Feather Island was earth-shattering and attracted everyone's attention. The disciples of Golden Feather Temple were all shocked. It was hard to imagine that the sect master they worshipped in their hearts would team up with the elders to attack a group of people whose realms were far lower than theirs. This was not the main point. The main point was that the elders were falling one by one. In a short while, the 6 elders were all dead, and even their corpses disappeared. These corpses were naturally collected by the Sword Celestial Doppelganger. In the blink of an eye, Wukong became a commander without any helpers. Damn it, why is my attack ineffective? Wukong couldn't understand. With his realm as a second-stage Heavenly Lord, he couldn't do anything to Luo, a half-step Heavenly Lord. It was too fake. However, he didn't believe it. Next he fought with Luo for a while. Luo was never injured, and her saint power seemed to be endless as she attacked him crazily. For a moment Wukong actually smelled a dangerous aura. In desperation, he could only divert his firepower and attack others. Unfortunately, whether it was the old tree or black horn, every time they were destroyed they would reappear. As for the Sword Celestial Doppelganger, it was even more terrifying. Just like Luo, who was wearing the Void Spirit Divine Armor, it didn't dodge his attacks at all. At this moment, whoosh whoosh, suddenly, a gust of wind fell into Wukong's ears. He turned his head and saw a black spike attacking him. He activated the saint power in his body and prepared to block it. However, what surprised him was that the spike actually crushed his saint power in an instant and pierced his palm. Poof! This black spike was the poison deity spike that Wei Zhentian had transformed into. The poison today was called Blazing Flame Poison. Once stabbed, the body would feel as if it had fallen into a fiery abyss, and it was extremely painful. The saint power in his body was also constantly evaporating. After a while, Wukong would be roasted alive. After stabbing Wukong, the Sword Celestial Doppelganger quickly put away Wei Zhentian. Then, Luo put on the Void Spirit Divine Armor in the Devouring space and attacked again. Damn it, let's go. Wukong's expression changed drastically, and he turned to leave. If it wasn't for the poison deity spike, even if everyone joined forces, they wouldn't be able to do anything to him. However, even he couldn't get rid of the blazing flame poison. If they continued to fight, he would definitely be the one to die. Humph, you wanna run? The Sword Celestial Doppelganger's eyes flickered. He immediately flashed behind Wukong and attacked. Get lost. Wukong turned around and slapped the Sword Celestial Doppelganger away. However, before this, Luo was put away by the Sword Celestial Doppelganger and released again. She appeared beside Wukong. Bam! Luo took the hit and was sent flying. However, the powerful Void Spirit Divine Armor only injured her slightly. In the blink of an eye, she was healed by the Immortal Phoenix bloodline. This guy is carrying 2 random missions. As long as I kill him, I can get double the reward. I must kill him as soon as possible. Chapter 2006. However, Wukong's speed was indeed very fast. After all, he was a Tier 2 Heavenly Lord. Without the Assassination Eye, it was impossible to catch up with him. Damn it, what is that burning aura in my body? My saint power is being depleted. Wukong took out a precious elixir and swallowed it while defending. He knew that if his saint power was depleted, it would be his time to die. At this moment he had a flash of inspiration. There seemed to be a big city near the Golden Feather Training Ground. Its strength was not weaker than the Golden Feather Training Ground. The Golden Feather Training Ground had cooperated with this big city many times before. If he went there, he might be able to seek help. Yixian did not know this, so he let the Sword Celestial Avatar use the Assassination Eye continuously to get closer to Wukong. When Wukong's saint power was about to be depleted, he finally found the big city. He immediately rushed in and shouted, I am the master of the Golden Feather Training Ground, Wukong. I am being hunted by villains. City Master Wang, please help me. His voice was deafening and spread throughout the entire city. Immediately, the experts of the City Master Mansion rushed out and saw Wukong. It is indeed the master of the Golden Feather Training Ground, Wukong. Help! A middle-aged man shouted angrily and led the experts to attack. A Tier 2 Heavenly Lord and 6 Tier 1 Heavenly Lords. That's all there is to it. The Sword Celestial Avatar squinted his eyes and rushed forward. Then Luo, who was wearing the Void Spirit Divine armor, appeared and fought with them. Rumble. Loud sounds came from the sky. Even when facing so many experts, Luo was not afraid at all. This guy, how did he cultivate? Wukong could not help but think. In such a short period of time, the combat strength of Yi Xian's group had increased by so much. Previously, they would at most be able to fight against a second-stage Holy Emperor, but now they were actually able to fight against a second-stage Heavenly Lord. Therefore, Wukong was very interested in Yi Xian's body. He, who was seriously injured, watched from the periphery and helped from time to time. He glanced at Luo and the others, then made a decision. Whoosh! Suddenly, a bright light burst out of Wukong's body and rushed toward the Sword Celestial Avatar. However, when the bright light hit the Sword Celestial Avatar, it was suddenly repelled. What? This beam of light was actually Wukong's soul. He wanted to enter the Sword Immortal Avatar and possess Elder Luoyang and Tao Master Wukong. Who would have thought that he would fail? When the Sword Immortal Avatar saw this, he immediately slashed out with his sword. However, this ordinary attack was unable to harm He Jian's soul. After He Jian's soul left Wukong's body, his body fell from the sky. In the next moment, He Jian stared at Luo, who was closest to him. Surprisingly, Luo, who was wearing the Void Spirit Divine armor, was also immune to this attack. Then, only the old tree and Black Cove were left. It's you. He Jian's eyes lit up as he dashed toward the old tree. He knows that the old tree is a Zuoist and the Black Horn is a holy beast, so he chooses the old tree first. Pooh! Before the old tree could react, He Jian's soul entered it. At the same time, a system notification sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Ding! The body of the infernal god unicorn has been occupied. Hearing this, Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. This bastard wants to occupy the old tree's body? However, what surprised him was that this body was really taken over by He Jian. Young master, I can't control my body. The old tree's voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. This was not the point. The point was that after the old tree's body was occupied, its aura suddenly soared. It directly reached the level of Half-Lord of Heaven from the 5th grade Sacred Venerable Realm. Holy Sich *T. Yi Xian was frightened. After He Jian possessed the old tree's body, he forcibly increased the level of the old tree. This meant that the old tree's strength would be very strong. Boom! Suddenly, a powerful flame soared into the sky and spread out in an instant. Whether it was the city master or those Lord of Heaven high ships, they were all burned to ashes. Even the Black Horn could not resist. Fortunately, this kind of attack had no effect on Luo, who was wearing the Void Spirit Divine armor. As for the Sword Celestial Doppelganger, nothing would happen to it. Ah, young master, this guy is devouring my soul. The old tree shouted again. Yi Xian's face was gloomy. Ever since He Jian's soul occupied the old tree's body, he could no longer command the infernal god unicorn. However, the old tree was still his Dharma treasure. As long as He Jian was killed, the old tree should be able to be reborn. Then He Jian would disappear. Luo, Sword Celestial Doppelganger, kill him. Yi Xian immediately ordered. In an instant, 3 figures were fighting in a sea of fire. However, even with the Void Spirit Divine armor, Luo was only immune to fire attacks. She was accidentally hit by the infernal god unicorn and almost died. The Void Spirit Divine armor was immune to energy attacks and had a lot of material defense. However, it almost killed Luo. Yi Xian was so scared that he quickly asked Luo to retreat. The second random task prohibited him from using the time reversal skill. If He Jian was not dead, he would not be able to use it. If Luo died, there would be no way to save her. Moreover, if the old tree's soul was forcefully devoured, Yi Xian did not know if he could be resurrected. What should I do? Yi Xian's face changed greatly as he quickly thought of a solution. Young master, I am resisting with all my strength. It won't be that easy for him to devour my soul. You should leave first and come back to save me when you are strong enough. The old tree's voice rang in Yi Xian's mind. It seemed that this was the only way. Yi Xian immediately asked the Sword Celestial Doppelganger to put Luo away. Then, he tried to recall the infernal god unicorn but found that he could no longer do so. As for the Sword Celestial Doppelganger, He stayed here to fight with the Infernal God Unicorn and delay the Infernal God Unicorn so that He Jian would not be able to divert too much attention to devour the old tree's soul. Beneath their feet was a sea of fire. Even the city lord, who was a second-stage heavenly lord, was burned to death, let alone the others. Ha 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 ha, kid, you finally know how powerful I am. He Jian laughed loudly. Don't be so arrogant. You will definitely die in my hands. Yi Xian scolded angrily. This body is not bad. If I devour his soul, my combat strength will continue to increase. When that time comes, let's see how you will deal with me. He Jian swept into the distance amidst his laughter. He knew that the sword celestial doppelganger was an invincible existence, so he could not be bothered with it. Seeing this, the sword celestial doppelganger immediately chased after him. This chase lasted for more than 10 days. During this time, Yi Xian had broken through to 2nd stage Sacred Master, while Black Horn and the others were 6th stage Sacred Masters. Chapter 2007. The crisis this time was beyond Yi Xian's expectation, so he decided not to take the mission reward this time. No matter what, he had to kill He Jian. More than 10 days passed. At this time, Yi Xian was already a 6th grade Sacred Master, while Black Horn and the others had finally broken through to 1st grade Sacred Emperor. As for Luoluo, she had reached the Heavenly Lord realm. Young Master, I estimate that I will be devoured in 3 days. The old tree's voice was very weak, as if he was on his last breath. Okay, Sword Celestial Avatar Black Horn Luoluo attack. Yi Xian nodded solemnly. In the next moment, the Sword Celestial Avatar, who had been using the Eye of Assassination to hunt down Infernal God Unicorn, suddenly attacked. You're finally making a move? He Jian squinted his eyes and immediately turned around to spit out a scorching flame. However, it was useless against the Sword Celestial Avatar in Luoluo. Heavenly Flame Right. Flying Immortal Sword. Devouring Dragon Roar. Black Horn and the others attacked with all their might. Luoluo's attack was the strongest among them, but her attacks were also of the fire attribute. Infernal God Unicorn was still Yi Xian's opponent, so his attack was greatly reduced. However, Luoluo was now at the Heavenly Lord realm, and Infernal God Unicorn was only a 2nd grade Heavenly Lord. In just one move, he had severely injured Infernal God Unicorn. In fact, Yi Xian would try every time he broke through, but Infernal God Unicorn also had the Immortal Phoenix bloodline, so his recovery was extremely strong, so Yi Xian could not do anything to him. Fortunately, he could finally do it now. No, how did your strength increase so quickly? He Jian shouted loudly. He had used a secret method to make Infernal God Unicorn break through to 2nd grade Heavenly Lord at the cost of his soul. But Luoluo had broken through to this realm in just a few days. It was impossible. Nothing is impossible. Die. The Sword Celestial Avatar opened his eyes wide and attacked directly. Infernal God Unicorn's body had not recovered, but he was attacked by the Sword Celestial Avatar in Black Horn, and his injuries immediately became worse. Luoluo's attack followed. Boom! Flaming meteors rained down one after another, smashing Unicorn into minced meat. Ding! Infernal God Unicorn has died. Ding! Infernal God Unicorn has been resurrected. 2 system notifications rang out, and the old tree was revived in the devouring space. Furthermore, his soul had also been restored to its previous level. The mission was completed? Yi Xian raised his eyebrows, but he didn't hear any notification for the completion of the quest. He immediately took a look. He found that there was a cloud of blue mist floating above Unicorn's body that had turned into mud. If Yi Xian did not possess the Eye of Revelation, he might not have noticed it. This blue mist must be He Jian's soul. Although Yi Xian didn't know why He Jian's soul was like this, he couldn't care less and attacked directly. Unexpectedly, he couldn't hurt him at all. Idiot, do you think I'm an ordinary soul? He Jian snorted coldly. This soul of his was so strange that it could actually speak. I don't believe it. Attack with all your might. Yi Xian immediately ordered. Luoluo, Black Horn, Old Tree, and the Sword Saint Avatar attacked with all their might, but they still couldn't hurt He Jian's soul. What the hell was this He Jian? At this time, Xiao. He Jian suddenly turned into a blue shadow and rushed toward Black Horn this time. You want to take over my body again? No way. Yixian quickly kept Black Horn and Old Tree into the devouring space. As for Luoluo, she was immune to this kind of attack because she was wearing the Void Spirit Divine armor. She had already shaken off her soul last time, so there was no need to be afraid. You can't hurt my mutated soul, so why don't we just write it off like this? You go your way and I'll go mine. He Jian suddenly suggested. Get lost, you almost killed my people and you want to write it off like this? Yixian cursed. What's more, he still had 2 random missions to complete. As long as He Jian died, these 2 random missions would be completed. After all, he couldn't use the time reversal skill before the random missions were completed. Some random missions were mandatory, and he couldn't refuse or give up. Then what can you do to me? Do you think you can kill me with your current means? He Jian said coldly. At this time, Yixian was thinking about whether Wei Zhentian had the form of a Dharma treasure that could absorb He Jian's mutated soul. However, at this time, suddenly a strong pressure appeared, and it shocked Yixian and He Jian so much that they couldn't move. Immediately after, a middle-aged man wearing the uniform of the Golden Feather Training Hall entered their sight. This is an expert from the dojo. He Jian recognized him at a glance. The Golden Feather Dojo where Wukong was the sect master was only a small branch in the 2nd level heaven, while the Golden Feather Dojo was established in the 3rd level heaven. This middle-aged man came from the 3rd level heaven's dojo, and his strength was probably at the invincible Heavenly Lord realm. Kid, you're the one who betrayed your master and killed all the elders in the 72nd dojo, and then chased after the sect master of the branch Wukong? The middle-aged man asked. Yixian was shocked and hurriedly said, Senior, you've misunderstood. Someone took over Elder Luoyang's body, then sect master Wukong's body, and wanted to harm me. The person who took over is this mutated soul in front of you. Oh, the middle-aged man was puzzled. He glanced at it but didn't see any soul. However, a mutated soul wasn't something that ordinary people could see. Immediately, he took out a lantern magic treasure and opened it. In the next moment, He Jian's mutated soul was sucked into it, and he could see it now. There really is a mutated soul. However, what you said has yet to be verified. Come with me. The middle-aged man said coldly and left with Yixian. Yixian was shocked. Was he going to the 3rd level heaven this time? As expected, this invincible Heavenly Lord's strength was beyond his understanding. He directly soared into the sky and walked toward it. Then they passed through the long dark area and arrived at the 3rd level heaven. After a few days of traveling, they arrived at the Golden Feather Dojo in the 3rd level heaven. Sect Master, I've brought them back. The middle-aged man transmitted. Good, bring them in. After a while, the middle-aged man brought Yixian and He Jian's mutated soul to an old man. This old man had no aura at all, as if he was immortal. The sect master of the Golden Feather Dojo? Yixian was shocked. It was said that the sect master of the Golden Feather Dojo was a half-step Dao Lord, and he had already begun to comprehend the Dao. Come, let me see that mutated soul, the old man said to the middle-aged man. Chapter 2008. Dao Master, please spare my life. He Jian's soul shouted anxiously as he sensed danger. Yixian might not be able to do anything to him, but the middle-aged man was enough, let alone the Dao Master. Don't worry. If you're innocent, I'll let you go. The Golden Feather Dao Master opened the lantern and grabbed He Jian's mutated soul with his hand. 3 seconds later, I figured out the ins and outs of the matter. This He Jian's soul has mutated. It looks like a possession, but it's actually devouring other people's souls to grow and take over their bodies. The Golden Feather Dao Master said slowly, This person is unforgivable. Coincidentally, I've comprehended the soul-devouring Tao of the 100,000 Great Das. I'll take your soul. No, no. He Jian immediately shouted when he heard that. In the next moment, his mutated soul was crushed by the Golden Feather Dao Master right in front of Yixian. Then the blue mist surged into the Golden Feather Dao Master's body. The soul-devouring Tao of the 100,000 Great Das? Yixian raised an eyebrow. He couldn't understand it at his current level. However, after He Jian's death, 2 system notifications rang in his mind. Ding! Host has completed 2 random missions. Ding! Heaven's Appraiser's magic treasure form is fixed. This was the reward Yixian got for completing the random missions after so long. Damn it, the reward is a fixed Heavens Appraiser's magic treasure form. Yixian looked helpless. This magic treasure form had long been eliminated. It wasn't even a tenth of the flying sword form, so it was useless. However, Yixian was in luck because the Heavens Appraiser's magic treasure, Xingtian, could be combined with the poison god spike. At this moment, the Golden Feather Dao Master said, "You're Yixian, right?" "Yes, senior." Yixian nodded. "I know from Hejian's memories that you're very talented. At the same time, you're a disciple of the Golden Feather Dao sect. I happen to have a mission on hand. Can you help me complete it?" The Golden Feather Dao Master said. Yixian paused, then said, "Senior, please speak. I want you to return to the second layer of heaven and establish a new dojo. You will be the Dao Master, but do not use the name Golden Feather Dojo," said the Golden Feather Dao Master. "What?" After Yixian finished listening, he asked in astonishment, "I'm not even a half-step heavenly monarch. How can I establish a dojo?" "With my Golden Feather training ground backing you up, you don't have to worry," the Golden Feather Pathmaster said. "To be honest, there might be a calamity coming up, and it might even destroy the Golden Feather Path sect. That is why I want you to pass on the incense." "Then why didn't you find someone else?" Yixian frowned. "The others have already shown their faces. You have the ability to disguise yourself. As long as you change your appearance, normal people won't be able to find you." After Golden Feather Sect Master finished speaking, he took out an interspatial ring and said, "Are you willing to take on this responsibility?" "This?" Yixian hesitated for a moment. Now, the Golden Feather Pathmaster wanted him to establish a sect and be the sect master himself. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Currently, his sword celestial clone was brought to the third layer of heaven, while his original body was still at the second layer of heaven. If he wanted to leave, even a half-step Dao Master could not stop him. However, in the next moment he made a decision. Ding! Host has triggered a sect mission. Mission completion reward. Activating the sect system. Sect mission? A new system? Yixian was shocked. Before he could react, the system gave him another notification. Ding! Accept the interspatial ring from the Golden Feather Pathmaster and return to the second layer of heaven to establish a new dojo and become the Dao Master. This was the sect mission and it was very simple. However, there was a requirement. The requirement was to fix a sect location and accept 100 half-step Heavenly Monarch disciples. This was not difficult for Yixian at the moment. Since that's the case, then Yixian will agree. "Senior, I agree." Yixian nodded and took the interspatial ring. "Although there are not many things in here, it is enough for you to cultivate to the invincible Heavenly Monarch level. There are also some martial arts techniques. After that, you will have to rely on your own hands to obtain them." After the Golden Feather Pathmaster finished speaking, he took out a sword-shaped token and said, "This will be your sect master's token. Put it in the interspatial ring." "Oh, okay." Yixian did not think too much and kept the token. "When you came here, you were brought here by Yun Guang. Next, Yun Guang will bring you back to another place to establish a sect." After the Golden Feather Pathmaster finished speaking, he waved his hand. Then the middle-aged man named Yun Guang secretly left the Golden Feather Dojo with Yixian and returned to the second layer of heaven through a teleportation formation. Remember, this is a secret mission. Do not reveal that you are a disciple of the Golden Feather Dojo, and do not mention that you have met the Dao Master. Yun Guang paused and said, "Next, you will be the sect master. Have you thought of a name for the dojo?" Let's call it the Lianyun Dojo," Yixian said casually, because he was born in Lianyun City. "Okay, then the Lianyun Dojo. I will now erase the memories of everyone in the dojo. But even so, you should change your appearance." Yun Guang nodded and left through the void again. This time it was beyond his expectations. He did not expect to be given such an important mission. What a scam! However, he also found some clues. At this time he had already immersed his mind into the devouring space. The sword-shaped token that the Golden Feather Pathmaster gave him was a little strange. Seemed to be something special. But then again, now that he had returned to the second layer of heaven, he was going to establish a sect. More importantly, he was only a saint venerable, so he could not be the pathmaster. Oh right, after the old tree's body was occupied by Hejian, he broke through to the half-step Heavenly Lord realm. Then Hejian used his soul to help the old tree grow to the second level Heavenly Lord realm. Now the old tree is a powerful existence in the second layer of heaven. Yixian thought to himself. Hejian had helped him a lot. However, because of the contract, the old tree could not increase his realm anymore, unless Yixian reached the 9th level half-step Heavenly Lord realm. Tisk tsk. The mission to activate the sex system is not difficult. It can be activated as long as we have 100 half-step Heavenly Lord realm disciples. I wonder what the function of the sex system is? Yixian was looking forward to it, but he had to choose a location first. He asked Blackhorn, the old tree Luo, and the others to spread out and find a good place. Half a day later. Young master, this is a good place. It is a valley, very suitable for setting up a concealment array. Chapter 2009. Yixian's plan was to find a good place to set up the array, and then build a space devouring portal at the entrance. That way, anyone who entered the dojo would be transported to the space devouring portal. How could Yixian not make good use of such a good place like the space devouring portal? Soon, Yixian chose the place and let Luo learn the array that he had exchanged from the celestial level devouring system. In less than half a day, the array was completed and Yixian set up a space devouring portal at the entrance of the array. The place is ready. I wonder what's going on with the old tree? Yixian thought to himself. Previously, he had asked the old tree to search for nearby cities and then recruit some disciples. Coincidentally, not long after Luo finished setting up the array, the old tree arrived with a few hundred people. These people were all half-heavenly lords. Some were high while some were low, but they all met the requirements of the mission. Although some of them did not have high aptitudes, Yixian brought them all in to complete the mission. When the time came, he would just reward them with something. These people entered the space devouring portal and arrived at the space devouring portal. Ding! Host has completed the sect mission and activated the sect system. Ding! Current sect level is 0. Number of disciples is 467. Hearing this, Yixian quickly checked the sect system. The sect master was the old tree to the outside world, but in fact it was him. The old tree was only the temporary sect master. However, this did not matter. After all, he valued the sect system. The name was not important. In addition, these disciples' names, genders, realms, and aptitudes were also listed. Most people had aptitudes of 1 to 2 stars. Only a few had reached 3 stars. Damn, there are 9 levels in the aptitudes assessment. Among these people, the highest aptitude is only 3 stars. Yixian rolled his eyes and quickly added Luo's name to the Lianyun dojo. Unexpectedly, Luo's aptitude was unknown. Not only that, but so was the old tree. Forget it. Let's see what's so good about joining a sect. Yixian shook his head and looked through the list carefully. There were many benefits to the sect system. As the master of the dojo, Yixian could enjoy all kinds of enhancements. The current sect level was 0, so there was no increase in strength at all. If it was upgraded to level 1, then the strength of Yixian and his subordinates would increase tenfold. In addition, the disciples of his sect had their aptitude and battle prowess doubled. It was too terrifying. Old tree, from now on you will be the Dao master of Lianyun Dao sect, and I will be behind the scenes. Yixian said to the old tree. Alright, then I'll change my name to Yitsong from now on. I'll be the Taoist master of Lianyun dojo. The old tree said. Yitsong, huh? After hearing this name, Yixian narrowed his eyes. It was quite suitable for the old tree. Just like that, Yixian established the Lianyun Taoist sect. As the old tree of the Tao master, his current combat strength was probably equivalent to that of a top-notch heaven monarch. This strength was enough to dominate the second layer of heaven. Ding! Host has triggered the chain quest of the sect. Upgrade the sect level to level 1. Reward. Time control advancement. Another system notification sounded. Yixian raised his eyebrows. Upgrading to level 1 didn't seem to be that difficult. Currently, the sect was at level 0, and there were more than 400 half-step Heaven Monarch disciples. As long as the number of half-step Heaven Monarch disciples increased to 10,000, then the sect would be upgraded to level 1. "Young master, what do we do next?" Old Tree asked. "If we want to recruit disciples, then we have to make some noise. Old Tree, go challenge the various city lords and sect masters. Spread the name of our Lian Yun Dao sect." Yixian said. "Okay, then I'll go right away." Old Tree nodded. As for Luo Luo, she stayed in the sword's devouring space to cultivate. After a while, her strength would probably reach the invincible heaven monarch level. Then, she would be able to dominate the entire second layer of heaven. As for his original body, he had already found a good place to hide. Old Tree's strength was almost at the peak of the second layer of heaven. As long as there were no invincible heaven monarchs, there would be no problem. In addition, Yixian also sent a large number of people to build teleportation formations in the various cities to make things more convenient for everyone. In the following period of time, the name of the Lian Yun Dao sect spread rapidly. The interspatial ring that the Golden Feather sect master had given him contained countless treasures that could allow one to continuously cultivate to the invincible heaven monarch level. He left 2/3 of it for Luo Luo and used it to cultivate disciples. After all, these were all half-step heaven monarch level disciples. It was very easy to use 1/3 of the resources to raise tens of thousands of disciples to the heaven monarch level. With such a large amount of cultivation resources and the help of the devouring space, it would be no problem for the sect to reach the requirements in a short period of time. After a period of time, while waiting for Old Tree's return, Yixian had broken through to the 9th grade Sacred Master level. He was only one step away from the 1st grade Sacred Emperor level. During this period of time, there were many people who joined the Lian Yun Dao sect and were arranged to cultivate in the devouring space. Yixian did not reject anyone, because he had a large amount of cultivation resources to back him up. He was thinking that it would be great if he met a few talented disciples. Finally, Old Tree made a name for himself. This time he brought back tens of thousands of people. They were all high-level half-step heaven monarchs, and there were even mid-level heaven monarchs. Those high-level heaven monarchs were basically the people who held down the fort in some sections. It was impossible for them to leave. The addition of mid-level heaven monarchs had already exceeded Yixian's expectations. "Oh, not bad. We actually have a 5-star genius." Yixian nodded satisfactorily. "Ding! Host has completed the first round of the sect chain mission. Reward: time control advancement." When the system prompt, Yixian sounded out, the speed of the devouring space slowed down once again. A day in the outside world was equivalent to 4,480 years in the devouring space. It was really terrifying. The first round of the sect chain mission was completed. Next was the second round of the mission. The second round of the mission was still a little difficult for Yixian because he had to find a 6-star disciple. However, what was out of his expectations was that the disciple with 5-star aptitude actually rose to 6-star aptitude after joining the sect. Don't forget, the sect was now at the 1st level. The disciple's aptitude had doubled. The 5-star disciple's aptitude doubled and became a 6-star disciple. It was really too much of a coincidence. Ding! Host has completed the second round of the sect chain mission. Reward: time control advancement. When the system notification sounded, the speed of time in the devouring space slowed down again. A day in the outside world was equivalent to nearly 10,000 years in the devouring space. Chapter 2010. However, the third part of the sect chain mission was a little more difficult. It required Yixian to find 100 disciples with 6-star aptitude, and they had to be in the Lord of Heaven realm. This was a little difficult. After all, the current 6-star aptitude disciple was only an 8th grade half-Lord of Heaven. They're all a bunch of useless trash. Even if their aptitude is doubled, they'll only be 5-star at most. Yixian shook his head. The highest aptitude evaluation was 9-star. 5-star aptitude was not enough. However, he calmed down. After all, the sect system had just been opened. At this moment he suddenly thought of something. Oh right, there are countless people in the devouring space. If I take all of them into the Lian Yun Daoist sect, I might be able to find some with good aptitude. At this thought, Yixian immediately took out a large number of disciple tokens and forced everyone to refine them. In this way, they would be forced to become disciples of the Lian Yun Daoist sect. Yixian quickly checked and found that there were more than 300 billion people in the Lian Yun Daoist sect. This number shocked him. Before this, he had taken in many people, including some of his enemies, into the devouring space. Then, because the time was different from the outside world, many generations had passed. The devouring space was actually a small world, and Yixian was the owner of this small world. With so many people, it was not difficult to find 100 6-star aptitude disciples. However, these 6-star aptitude disciples were of different realms. Some of them were even a few realms apart. Yixian quickly distributed cultivation resources to them, and then asked a Lord of Heaven expert to guide them. In just one day, all of them had reached the half-Lord of Heaven realm. Ding! Host has completed the third part of the sect chain mission. Reward: Space-time bloodline evolution. When the space-time bloodline evolved, the control of time and space would also evolve. This would affect the flow rate and size of the devouring space. This was killing many birds with one stone. However, the fourth part of the sect chain mission was awkward. It required a 7-star aptitude Lord of Heaven. This was not something Yixian could do at the moment. There were already so few 6-star aptitude disciples, and none of them were 7-star aptitude disciples. What was he going to find? Yixian, who was vexed for a while, suddenly thought of something. His eyes immediately lit up. That's right, the devouring space takes up a lot of space, and these saints with long lifespans rarely reproduce. As long as I let them have more children, there might be some geniuses with genetic mutations that reach 7-star aptitude. Currently, the flow of time in the devouring space was extremely slow. A day in the outside world was close to 18,000 years in the devouring space. If it was based on the 20 years for an ordinary human generation, then a day in the outside world was equivalent to 900 generations in the devouring space. If that was the case, it wouldn't be as simple as multiplying the population by 900, because those new people would continue to reproduce. Yixian calculated for a moment before giving the order to the entire devouring space. However, at their level, it was not easy to get pregnant. Fortunately, they were in the devouring space. After a day, the 300 billion people in the devouring space multiplied to 100 trillion people. 1 trillion people meant 1 trillion people, and 100 trillion people meant 100 trillion people. With so many people, Yixian found a few 7-star aptitude disciples. However, the devouring space did not allow them to reproduce for another day. It would explode, so Yixian stopped immediately. Yixian continued to spend a large amount of natural treasures to let the 7-star aptitude disciples grow. This entire process took a few days. Ding! Host has broken through. You are now a first-grade Holy Emperor. Ding! Wei Zhentian, Skybreaking Ape God, and Devouring Black Scale Dragon have broken through. You are now a 5th-grade Holy Emperor. It was likely that no one in the devouring space would have thought that Yixian's cultivation level would be so low. This was because many of them were already at the Saint Emperor level, and the experts at the half-step Heavenly Lord level were calculated in hundreds of millions. However, this was only 1/1,000,000th of the total population. The total population was 100 trillion. Ding! Host has completed the 4th round of the sect chain mission. Reward: Immortal Eye Unicorn Bloodline Evolution. The Immortal Eye Unicorn bloodline had a total of 4 bloodlines. If he wanted to evolve all of them, he would need to spend a lot of devouring points. However, Yixian still hoped to evolve his space-time bloodline. Now that the 4th round of the sect chain mission had been completed, it was time for the 5th round. Ding! Host has completed the 5th round of the sect chain mission. Reputation has increased to the required level. Current reputation is 1% of the required level. This time, it was not a mission to nurture disciples, but to increase his reputation. The second heaven was actually very big, and the Lianyun Daoist sect was only the tip of the iceberg. Therefore, Yixian could only send a large number of people to build the teleportation formation and help the weak to increase his reputation. Reputation has increased to 2%. Reputation has increased to 3%. Reputation has increased to 5%. Yixian was very satisfied with the increase in his reputation. Now that everyone had communication tools, they only had to mention the Lianyun Daoist sect to their friends to increase their reputation. It was a pity that these people were increasing their reputation in the outside world, so time passed very slowly. This process was very slow, and it had been 1.5 months, but his reputation had only increased to 80%. At this time, Yi Xian had already reached the peak of the 9th grade Sacred Emperor realm. However, what surprised him was that the next breakthrough did not require cultivation resources. Instead, it required experience. From the 9th grade Sacred Emperor realm to the Half-Heavenly Lord realm, as long as one walked the heavenly road, they could pass on their experience to others. Just like Huazhan, he had passed on his cultivation experience to Luo Luo. Otherwise, Luo Luo would not have been able to break through. Now Yi Xian had to devour and absorb these experiences in order to break through. Fortunately, there was a mid-level Heavenly Lord in the devouring space, so he could absorb a large amount of experience. Ding! Host has completed the first section of the Heavenly Road. Ding! Host has completed the 10th section of the Heavenly Road. Ding! Host has completed the 34th section of the Heavenly Road. The system notifications kept ringing. After Yi Xian had devoured the experience of the mid-level Heavenly Lord realm, he had actually skipped the Half-Heavenly Lord realm and broken through to the Heavenly Lord realm. This is really too scary. Chapter 2011. This was because Yi Xian thought that he had to keep a low profile and was afraid that the bewitchment points would reach 100. However, after reaching the peak of the Saint Emperor realm, the bewitchment points seemed to have stopped. Then, after he broke through to the half-step Heaven Lord realm, the bewitchment points disappeared without a trace. To put it simply, Yi Xian could now break through quickly. However, unless he reached the invincible Heaven Lord realm, he would not have the means to break through the second heaven. Of course, if he used the teleportation array, he could teleport to the third heaven. Immediately, Yi Xian sent the Sword Immortal clone to the third heaven teleportation array. With his Heaven Lord realm, even an invincible Heaven Lord could not do anything to him, let alone the Sword Immortal clone. The third heaven had experts at the half-step Tao Lord realm, so Yi Xian wanted to go there to take a look. It would be best if he could get some cultivation experience from the invincible Heaven Lord realm so that he could continue to break through. As for here, he would continue to develop. Ding! Host has completed the 5th round of the Sect Chain mission. The system rewards the immortal Divine Phoenix bloodline to evolve once. When the system notification sounded, Yi Xian's eyes lit up. The immortal Divine Phoenix bloodline had evolved. Previously, he had already evolved his undying doppelganger 5 times. If he could obtain a doppelganger 3 times, then he would be able to condense another doppelganger 6 times. Currently, he had a total of 5 clones. 1 was in the mortal world, 3 were merged, and now there was 1 more. Yi Xian asked him to hide in the first heaven. At the same time, the 6th round of the Sect Chain mission appeared. This mission required Yi Xian to reach the half-step Tao Lord realm and possess 107-star aptitude invincible Heavenly Lords. Why is this mission so much more difficult than the previous missions? Is it because I completed it too quickly? Yi Xian did not understand the situation. In that case, he would put this mission aside for now. It was not so easy to reach the half-step Tao Lord realm. At this time, the Sword Immortal clone had been teleported to the third heaven. Yi Xian was ready to let Luo Luo, who had broken through to the high-level Heaven Lord realm, appear again. However, right at this moment, ding, the Heaven-loathing Fox bloodline has entered the 2nd stage. Luo Luo has entered the dormant period. Suddenly, the sound of a system notification caught Yi Xian off guard. Luoluo's Heaven-loathing Fox bloodline had a 2nd stage? Luo Luo is currently a level 8 Heavenly Lord. If she can continue to awaken her bloodline, her strength will definitely become even stronger. Yi Xian thought to himself. He was now at the Heaven Lord realm. Although he hadn't fought with an invincible Heaven Lord before, based on the previous situation, there shouldn't be anyone below the half-step Tao Lord realm who could match him. Moreover, there was also the old tree Blackhorn and Megatron. After the Sword Immortal avatar reached the 3rd firmament, he would randomly search for a target. He wanted to control an invincible Heavenly Lord and obtain cultivation experience. Unfortunately, what happened next was slightly out of his expectations. After entering the 3rd heavenly layer, the Sword Immortal avatar encountered an invincible Heavenly Lord of the 1st stage. However, what was surprising was that the Sword Immortal avatar of the 1st stage Heavenly Lord was only able to fight to a draw with him. If the Sword Immortal avatar didn't have an invincible body, he might have been defeated. Could this person be a super elite of some large faction? Yi Xian didn't believe it. He immediately ordered the Sword Immortal avatar to continue searching. Then, he encountered another invincible heavenly lord. What Yixian didn't expect was that he couldn't do anything to the other party. Were all people at the third firmament so strong? Yixian continued to let the sword immortal avatar search. In the end, he finally used a method of attrition to kill an invincible heavenly lord and captured him alive. It turned out that going from a heavenly lord to an invincible heavenly lord was like reaching the heavens in a single step. Even 10,000 level 9 heavenly lords might not be able to defeat an invincible heavenly lord. This was how the invincible heavenly lord came to be. Fortunately, Yixian finally captured an invincible heavenly lord. Then, he asked Megatron to extract his cultivation experience. Yixian's realm directly reached the level 6 heavenly lord realm. Because everyone's cultivation method was different, Yixian couldn't steal 100% of the other party's cultivation experience. Moreover, it was worth mentioning that they weren't using cultivation resources to increase their cultivation. Therefore, Blackhorn Old Tree and the others' realms were the same as Yixian's. If that's the case, Old Tree's strength won't be able to keep up with Blackhorn and me. Yixian narrowed his eyes slightly. However, it didn't matter. Old Tree's strength was still enough to suppress everyone present. However, even if Yixian broke through to the level 6 heavenly lord realm, his ability to challenge those of a higher realm was still decreasing. Previously, the level 1 heavenly lord sword immortal avatar had a hard time capturing an invincible heavenly lord realm. In the invincible heavenly lord realm, the gap between each level was huge. Therefore, Yixian's level 6 heavenly lord realm was at most similar to a level 3 invincible heavenly lord realm. At this time, Yixian had already sent the sword immortal avatar to find the Golden Feather Palace. However, another thing happened that was out of his expectations. On the way to the Golden Feather Palace, he suddenly received a piece of news. The Golden Feather Palace had been destroyed. The Dao Master of the Golden Feather Palace, a half-step Dao Lord expert, had been killed. Not a single person in the entire sect had survived. It was said that the faction that destroyed the Golden Feather Palace had sent a large number of experts to capture everyone in the Golden Feather Palace branch. The faction that destroyed the Golden Feather Palace was called the Flying Rainbow Palace. It also had a half-step Dao Lord expert, but it was much stronger than the Golden Feather Palace. The Dao Master of the Golden Feather Palace's words were indeed true. How did they provoke such a strong enemy? Yixian was a little confused. In the next moment, his attention fell on something in the Devour space. It was the sword-shaped token that the Dao Master of the Golden Feather Palace had given him. However, at this moment, rumble. Suddenly, a loud sound entered Yixian's ears. What was going on? Yixian was puzzled. He opened his eyes and saw that the defensive formation of the connecting Cloud Palace had been broken. Humph, a sect that doesn't even have a half-step Dao Lord dares to call itself a palace? Suddenly, a cold snort sounded. Yixian focused his eyes and saw a young man standing in the air in front of him. After breaking through to this realm, Yixian's true body had been guarding the entrance of the connecting Cloud Palace. Now that the defensive formation had been broken, he was also discovered. An invincible heavenly lord. Yixian narrowed his eyes as he sensed the other party's aura. At the very least, it was an invincible rank 3 heavenly lord. Sir, what's the matter? Yixian asked. This is the entrance of the connecting Cloud Palace, right? Watch me enter and kill your Dao Master. I'll let you know that from now on, there will only be one palace in the second layer of heaven, and that is our Flying Rainbow Palace. Chapter 2012. This idiot. Yixian shook his head helplessly. After setting up a new defensive formation, he immersed his mind into the devouring space. The young man who entered was instantly suppressed to the point that he could not move. Even an invincible 9th stage heavenly lord would be like an ant when he entered. What's going on? Why can't I move? The young man was shocked. At this moment, Yixian suddenly projected himself into the devouring space and said, "Of course. This is my territory, so I'm the one in charge." "It's you?" The young man looked at him. Wasn't this the 6th stage heavenly lord who was near the entrance? Before he could recover from his shock, Yixian asked, "Are you from the Flying Rainbow Taoist sect? Since you know, how dare you trap me?" The young man glared at him. "Oh, don't try to threaten me. Wei Zhentian, I'll leave him to you." After Yixian finished speaking, He asked Wei Zhentian to search the young man's soul. Although the soul search was slow, Wei Zhentian extracted the young man's memories and cultivation experience in less than a second in the devouring space. Bing! Host has broken through. You are now a 9th stage Heavenly Lord. Yi Xian's strength increased again. At the same time, he also learned the identity of the young man. He was a disciple of the Flying Rainbow Taoist sect. The Flying Rainbow Taoist sect was the sect that destroyed the Golden Feather Taoist sect. Like the others, this disciple came to the second heaven and captured all the people from the Golden Feather Taoist sect. He happened to pass by this area and learned about the Lianyun Taoist sect. A Taoist sect must have a half-step Tao Lord to be called a Taoist sect. The strongest person in the Lianyun Taoist sect was not even an invincible Heavenly Lord. How could it be called a Taoist sect? That was why he wanted to kill Tao Master Lianyun, who had an exaggerated opinion of his abilities. Unexpectedly, he fell into a trap. Then Yi Xian handed this person to Wei Zhentian. After the mask of the true and false devoured his body, it had the ability to transform into him. However, only the face, body, and aura were the same. His strength would not change. Now that I'm a 9th stage Heavenly Lord, if I work with Black Horn, I should be able to fight an invincible 5th stage Heavenly Lord. Yi Xian thought to himself. There was a huge gap between a Heaven Lord and an invincible Heaven Lord. Therefore, his ability to challenge those at a higher level was greatly reduced. It was said that there was an enormous gap between invincible Heavenly Lords and half-step Tao Lords. At this time, Yi Xian's original body had already moved out. He directly used the teleportation array and teleported to the 3rd heaven. Then he used the true mask to transform into the disciple of Flying Rainbow Taoist rite called Bu Ying. Now, he was going to the Flying Rainbow Dojo to investigate the destruction of the Golden Feather Dojo. However, it took them a month to get there. Since Yi Xian no longer needed cultivation resources to break through, he could still afford to waste time. A month later, Yi Xian finally found the Soaring Rainbow Taoist Dojo. Supposedly, this Taoist dojo was fairly strong, and it had a half-step Tao Lord guarding it. The entrance to the Flying Rainbow Dojo was very strict. Luckily, Yi Xian was wearing a mask, so he was able to enter the Flying Rainbow Dojo. This time he was here to investigate something. He didn't know if it would go so smoothly. After entering, he took off the mask and put on the Void Spirit Godly Armor. The Void Spirit Godly Armor had the ability to conceal oneself. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to discover it at all. Although he wasn't very strong now, after wearing the Void Spirit Godly Armor, even a half-step Tao Lord wouldn't be able to discover him. In the following period of time, he really did find some clues. However, it was already a month later. As expected, the reason why the Golden Feather Dojo was destroyed was because of the Flying Star Sword token. Yi Xian's eyes lit up. This matter wasn't hidden very well. Some of the elite disciples knew about it, let alone the protectors and elders. However, Yi Xian didn't know the use of the Flying Star Sword token for the time being. Perhaps only the higher-ups of the Flying Rainbow Dojo knew about it. Those disciples only knew to find this thing. I was once a disciple of the Golden Feather Dojo, and then because of the Golden Feather Dojo Lord, I triggered the sex system mission. Therefore, I still have to take revenge. Yi Xian thought to himself. As for the captured disciples of the Golden Feather Dojo, he couldn't save them for the time being. Even if he were to wear the Void Spirit Divine Armor, he would at most be able to fight against mid to high-level invincible heaven monarchs. However, the guardians of the Flying Rainbow Taoist Dojo were all at least half-step Tao monarchs. How could he save them? However, he didn't leave the Flying Rainbow Dojo. Instead, he continued to hide in the Flying Rainbow Dojo. Don't forget that the Sword Immortal clone was also in the 3rd heaven. Yi Xian controlled the Sword Immortal clone to leave the Flying Rainbow Dojo and spread a rumor. The 9th Flying Star Sword token has appeared in Sai Valley. Once this rumor spread, it immediately caused a huge commotion. This was because many major factions knew that the Flying Rainbow Dojo was looking for the Flying Star Sword token. Immediately, many people took action. They all wanted to obtain the Flying Star Sword token and give it to the Flying Rainbow Dojo. If you want to find the treasure, you have to be prepared to pay a bloody price. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. He already had the Sword Immortal clone hide in Sai Valley. Sure enough, it didn't take long for someone to find him. The Sai Valley was not big. and one could go around it very quickly. However, Yixian was very smart. He built a spatial devouring portal inside. Those who found the spatial devouring portal would hesitate for a while before entering it. This way they would become turtles in a jar. None of the invincible heavenly lords who entered could leave safely. They were instantly suppressed. As a result, Yixian's experience increased again. With the cultivation experience of so many people, Yixian's realm directly broke through from the 9th level Heavenly Lord to the invincible 9th level Heavenly Lord. This speed was really shocking. Damn, it's really fast. I rose 9 levels in a few days. If this was before, it would be impossible. Yixian was overjoyed. An invincible 9th level Heavenly Lord, coupled with the Void Spirit divine armor and various bloodlines, his current strength was probably enough to fight a half-step Dao Lord, right? Just nice, he got what he wanted. When he broke through to the invincible 9th level Heavenly Lord, a powerful aura suddenly descended. Then, after looking at the entrance of the spatial devouring portal for a while, he walked in. Here comes another fat sheep. I'll use you to practice. Yixian thought to himself. Right now he really wanted to find a half-step Dao Lord to fight. Now that this person had entered, he could first suppress him and then find him to practice. Unexpectedly, this half-step Dao Lord was not to be trifled with. This half-step Dao Lord who entered the spatial devouring portal immediately felt something strange. He instantly broke free from Yixian's suppression and then slashed out with his sword. Chapter 2013. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It was hard to imagine that this person's sword had actually split open the devouring space, creating a spatial rift. Ding! The devouring space is damaged. The current damage is 3%. The normal repair time is 3 years. Hearing this, Yixian was stunned. This was the first time that the devouring space was damaged. If the damage was 100%, would it collapse? No, that was not the case. Yixian was too naive. If the damage was 60%, the devouring space would collapse directly. What the F***ck? If you slashed a few more times, all my efforts would have been for nothing. Yixian was scared out of his wits. He hurriedly sent him back to the outside world. That's right, time reversal. When Yixian thought of this, he hurriedly used time reversal and returned to the past. But in the next moment he was shocked again. After time reversal, the damage to the devouring space was not repaired. In other words, time reversal was useless against the devouring space. However, this was reasonable. After all, the devouring space was the space of the devouring system, and time reversal was only an ability of the bloodline. Damn it, it actually needs 3 years to repair. Yixian cursed angrily in his heart. He originally wanted to suppress that half-step Dao Lord, but he did not expect to go for wool and come home shorn. What a huge loss. He had to take revenge. At that moment, Yixian waited here for that half-step Dao Lord to come. It was said that there was a huge gap between invincible heavenly lords and half-step Dao Lords. Even 10,000 invincible heavenly lords could not defeat a half-step Dao Lord. This was something that Yixian could not understand. It is said that half-step Dao Lords have already comprehended a type of Dao, and are 100 times more powerful than invincible heavenly lords. Even 10,000 invincible 9th stage heavenly lords wouldn't be able to defeat a half-step Dao Lord. I want to see for myself if this is true. Yixian thought to himself. However, what was left in the 4 Unity Valley was no longer his true body, but his sword immortal avatar. Although he wanted to challenge it, Yixian felt that it was best to use his sword immortal avatar to test the waters. If there was a chance, his true body would take action. After all, the sword immortal avatar could not wear the void spirit divine armor. Its strength was much weaker than his true body, but it would not die. Soon the half-step Dao Lord arrived. Kid, what's on the other side of this portal? Suddenly, the sword immortal avatar heard an unfamiliar voice. He turned his head and saw a middle-aged man. This was the half-step Dao Lord who had damaged the devouring space by 3%. Then the sword immortal avatar quickly closed the teleportation door and said coldly, "Next, you'd better show your true ability. Otherwise, you'll die a horrible death." Hearing this, the middle-aged man was shocked. What was going on? A mere 9th stage invincible heavenly monarch actually dared to say that? Was he courting death? Arrogant brat, watch me teach you a lesson on behalf of your elders. The middle-aged man did not say anything and raised his hand to slap the sword immortal avatar. Although this attack was only casually launched by him, its power was extremely fierce. It was enough to severely injure an invincible 9th stage heavenly monarch. Slaughter form. Sword immortal descend. Flying immortal sword. Facing such an attack, the sword immortal avatar directly used his trump card and rushed towards the middle-aged man. Pooh! With a muffled sound, the sword immortal avatar's long sword pierced the middle-aged man's hand. Unexpectedly, this attack actually triggered the one-hit kill effect. Unfortunately, this sword did not pierce the middle-aged man's palm. Instead, it pierced through the flame barrier that covered it. He can actually break through my flame barrier? How is this possible? The middle-aged man was shocked. He had lived for so many years, but this was the first time he had heard of such a thing, let alone seen it. I've comprehended the Tao of blazing fire. My flame barrier is not something an invincible 9th stage heavenly monarch can break through. What method did this person use? The middle-aged man frowned and quickly pulled back his palm, sending the sword immortal avatar flying. Yi Xian had seen through the sword just now. If the middle-aged man did not have a layer of flame barrier, he would have been killed instantly. Again, the sword immortal avatar roared and attacked again. Although the flying immortal sword could not be used, it still had the one-hit kill effect. As long as he could injure the middle-aged man, there was a possibility of killing him instantly. The teleportation door suddenly disappeared. It should be your doing. Could the flying star sword token be in your hands? After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he attacked with all his might. Unfortunately, the sword immortal avatar was a true invincible heavenly monarch. Even the half-step Tao Lord middle-aged man could not injure the sword immortal avatar. Boom! 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 The commotion in the Sai Valley was very loud. It was almost the sound of the sword immortal avatar being beaten up. The more the middle-aged man fought, the more he felt that something was wrong. How could an invincible heavenly monarch withstand so many attacks? This was impossible. Even if the opponent had an astonishing physique, there was no way his clothes could be undamaged, right? I have comprehended the Tao of Blaze, and my attack power is one of the best. But I can't hurt you at all. What the hell are you? The middle-aged man asked, puzzled. Since you can't hurt me, why don't we make a deal? The sword immortal avatar crawled up from the ground and said slowly, do you have the right to make a deal with me? The middle-aged man snorted. Oh, it seems you don't want to know the whereabouts of the flying star sword token. The sword immortal avatar shook his head. The flying star sword token. Hearing this name, the middle-aged man's body trembled violently. So you do know about the flying star sword token? Fine, tell me, how do you want to make this deal? My request is very simple. I am currently an invincible 9th stage heavenly monarch. As long as you tell me how to break through to the half-step Tao Lord level, I will tell you the whereabouts of the flying star sword token. The sword immortal avatar said. So simple? The middle-aged man raised an eyebrow. The method to break through to the half-step Tao Lord level was not very secretive. Any invincible 9th stage heavenly monarch with a bit of status would know. Yi Xian could actually go find these people and find out. However, there was no need for that. This was because he had the time reversal ability. As long as he asked for the method, he would be able to reverse time. This way it would not count as a deal. Regardless of whether Yi Xian was telling the truth or not, the middle-aged man had to give it a try. The only difference between invincible heavenly monarchs and half-step Tao Lords is the Tao. As long as you comprehend the Tao, you will be able to break through to the half-step Tao Lord level. The middle-aged man explained. I know that. How can you comprehend the Tao? The sword immortal avatar asked. Chapter 2014. The middle-aged man continued. Of course, you can also condense a Tao seed if you consume a large amount of fire attribute heavenly treasures and cultivate Tao arts. After hearing this, Yi Xian somewhat understood and asked, 100,000 minor Das means there are 100,000 types of Das? Of course. Apart from the Tao of raging fire, there is also the Tao of ice, Tao of lightning, Tao of gale, and so on. However, only 3,000 of the 100,000 minor Das can be upgraded to Grand Das. Only 99 of the 3,000 Grand Das can be upgraded to Holy Das. As long as you comprehend a minor Tao to late-stage greater mastery, you will have a chance to cultivate it into a grand Tao. If you succeed, you will become a Tao Lord. My Tao of Raging Fire is the embryonic form of the Holy Tao, so it can be upgraded all the way to Holy Tao. I see. Yixian understood now. He had forgotten that there were martial arts that could be exchanged for in the immortal level Devouring system. The half-step Tao Lord level martial arts were called Tao arts, which could be used to cultivate Tao seeds. If there are no more questions, shouldn't you fulfill your promise? The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes and asked. Not yet. I still need your cultivation experience. Don't tell me you don't have it. Yixian said. A half-step Tao Lord was enough to establish a dojo, and he would definitely have clansmen. He would naturally record his cultivation experience for his clansmen to comprehend. If you want it, I'll give it to you. The middle-aged man straightforwardly threw out a jade eye slip. He could get as many of these things as he wanted. After Yixian received the jade eye slip, he immediately scanned it and copied it into the immortal level Devouring system. Then, he used the time reversal skill to return to the time before the two met. Soon they met again, but this time, the middle-aged man did not recognize Yixian. Sir, I know the whereabouts of the Flying Star Sword token, but I have a request. If you can withstand one of my attacks, I will tell you the location of the Flying Star Sword token. When the middle-aged man appeared again, Yixian said this. A mere invincible ninth heavenly lord dares to speak so arrogantly? The middle-aged man was a little displeased, but to be able to cultivate to the invincible ninth heavenly lord level, he must have a background. You'll know once you give it a try whether I'm bluffing or not. Although I do not know what the Flying Star Sword token is, it must be obtained by the strong. Are you taking it or not? Asked the Sword Immortal clone. What is there to be afraid of? The middle-aged man obviously didn't think too much about it. After all, an invincible ninth stage heavenly lord couldn't hurt him. Don't worry, I won't attack your vitals. Yixian narrowed his eyes and immediately attacked. Slaughter mode. The Sword Immortal had descended. One sword flying immortal. The Sword Immortal avatar transformed into a stream of light and charged at the middle-aged man. Humph! The middle-aged man snorted coldly. He didn't even put up any defense and tried to clamp down on the long sword. Pooh! With a muffled sound, the unparalleled swords in the hands of the Sword Immortal clone were caught by the middle-aged man. Unfortunately, although the middle-aged man did not use flame protection this time, he did not trigger the one-hit kill effect. Again, Yixian's eyes flashed as he used his time reversal skill. If the first time didn't work, then he would use it twice. If the second time didn't work, then he would use it 5 times. In any case, Yixian was prepared to go back in time indefinitely. The second time, the one-hit kill effect didn't work again. The third time, it didn't work either. 10 times in a row, it didn't work. Yixian had no choice but to use his true body. He put on the Void Spirit Divine Armor and held the one-hit kill sword, waiting here. Using the one-hit kill to execute the Flying Immortal had an additional effect compared to the unparalleled swords, which was that it could greatly increase the chances of one-hit kills. This time it was beyond Yixian's expectations. Ding! Host has activated the one-hit kill effect. Ding! Host's killing intent has increased. The system notified. Finally, after Yixian executed the Flying Immortal for the 11th time, he insta-killed the half-step Tao Lord. The other party died because of carelessness. However, this was to be expected. After all, Yixian was only an invincible heavenly lord. Due to the huge gap between him and a half-step Tao Lord, the other party did not think much of it. If it were anyone else, they would have done the same. After this person died, Yixian quickly rushed over and put away the corpse. Now, he was already an invincible grade 9 heavenly lord, but he did not know how to break through to half-step Tao Lord. Therefore, he had to search the middle-aged man's soul, hoping to find something useful. However, he was disappointed. Damn it, how can I break through? Do I really have to stay in the land of extreme heat like him? Yixian frowned. The middle-aged man said that he had stayed in the land of extreme heat for hundreds of thousands of years before breaking through to half-step Tao Lord. Let alone hundreds of thousands of years, even if it was decades, Yixian would not be able to go there. However, at this moment, ding! The corpse can be analyzed. Do you want to proceed? Suddenly, a system notification sounded, startling Yi Xian. Yes, Yi Xian replied. Then, the immortal-level devouring system analyzed the middle-aged man's corpse. This analysis was very thorough. For example, it knew which part of the middle-aged man's body had not recovered from the injury, etc. However, this was not the main point. Ding! Host has obtained a blazing flame Dao seed. When the system notification sounded, Yi Xian quickly checked it. The blazing flame Dao seed was actually a small flame that jumped. Yi Xian immediately chose to devour it. Ding! Host has devoured the blazing flame Dao seed and condensed a blazing flame Dao seed. The current blazing flame Dao seed is at the early stage of elementary condensation. Ding! Host has broken through to half-step Dao Lord. 2 notifications sounded in succession. Yi Xian had finally broken through to half-step Dao Lord. Stepping from invincible heavenly lord to half-step Dao Lord was indeed a meteoric rise. Yi Xian felt that his strength had undergone a tremendous change. If the middle-aged man had not died, he would have been able to send him flying with one hand. Lesser Dao seeds are divided into 3 levels, which are elementary condensation, small success, and large success. Each level is divided into early, middle, and late stages. The prerequisite for breaking through from half-step Dao Lord to Dao Lord is to first condense a Dao seed and raise it to late-stage large success. If you want to break through from Dao Lord to Samsara Dao Lord, you have to raise 2 Grand Daos to late-stage large success. If you want to break through from Samsara Dao Lord to half-step Emperor, you have to raise 3 Grand Daos to late-stage large success. This was what Yi Xian had learned from the middle-aged man's memories. 100,000 lesser Daos, 3,000 Grand Daos, and 9x9 sacred Daos. Of these, 9x9 sacred Daos did not refer to 81 sacred Daos, but 99. Thus, condensing a Dao seed was very important. This was because every time you condensed a Dao seed, the difficulty of condensing a Dao seed would increase. If you condensed a Dao seed that was not of the 3,000 embryonic Grand Daos, then you would be useless. This was because only by condensing 3 embryonic Dao seeds of the 3,000 embryonic Grand Daos would you be qualified to break through to Dao Lord. Similarly, only embryonic Dao seeds of the sacred Dao would allow you to break through to Samsara Dao Lord. Fortunately, this blazing flame Dao seed was an embryonic Dao seed of the sacred Dao, so Yi Xian could continue to cultivate it. Most people would choose to cultivate embryonic Dao seeds of the sacred Dao. This way they would not be stuck in cultivation in the future. In addition, as Yi Xian broke through, the old tree Black Horn and the others broke through as well. However, unlike Yi Xian, Black Horn and the Skybreaking Ape were unable to condense Dao seeds. However, the old tree's Zuyuist could. At this moment, Yi Xian discovered that the old tree already had 2 Dao seeds in his body. Chapter 2015. On this black ball, there was a symbol that Yi Xian was very familiar with. The devouring symbol. Ding! The infernal god unicorn has formed the devouring Dao seed and evolved into the flame-devouring unicorn. The system notification sounded. Yi Xian was stunned. He quickly checked and found that the old tree's body had changed. The infernal god unicorn had evolved into the flame-devouring unicorn. What was going on? It was Yi Xian who had devoured the infernal Dao seed, not the old tree. Why did the old tree evolve? Yi Xian quickly sensed and found that he had more than 1 infernal Dao seed in his body. He also had the devouring Dao seed. This Dao seed was probably shared with the old tree, just like the immortal phoenix bloodline. Not only that, but Black Horn also had a corresponding Dao seed in his body. This meant that Luoluo, who was still in hibernation, probably shared it as well. In short, he had profited. Finally, my attacks also have the devouring effect. If I combine the power of fire and the devouring Dao seed, my attacks will be much stronger than ordinary people. Yi Xian was very happy. Immediately, he hurriedly checked on Old Shu, who had advanced. Now that the old tree had evolved into the flame-devouring unicorn, it had also learned the devouring skill. In addition, the old tree could absorb all fire attacks and temporarily convert them into strength. As for its ultimate move, it only had 9-layer devouring flames. That's awesome. Yi Xian couldn't help but gulp and quickly let the Sword Immortal clone fight the old tree. In the end, the old tree and the Sword Immortal clone were evenly matched. However, this was normal. After all, The old tree's devouring black flames had the same effect as the devouring dragon scales, and was immune to all fire attacks. This was even more awesome than the immortal phoenix bloodline. Of course, as long as Yixian wore the Void Spirit divine armor, he could still defeat the old tree. Now that Yixian had broken through to become a half-step Dao Lord, it was time to start a new operation. At that moment, he built another space-devouring portal, and waited for those little sheep to walk right into his trap. However, most of the cultivators here were at the invincible Heavenly Lord level. Very few half-step Dao Lords had arrived. Today Yixian had finally found yet another half-step Dao Lord. However, this time, he didn't dare to allow this half-step Dao Lord to enter his devouring space. Instead, he quickly closed the teleportation gate and took the initiative to appear. "I'm afraid there's no Flying Star Sword token here, right?" A white-haired old man said to the Sword Immortal Avatar. "Oh? How did you know?" The Sword Immortal Avatar asked in astonishment. "It's very simple. Ever since the disciples of the Flying Rainbow Dojo started looking for the Flying Star Sword token, many people started plotting against them. They released fake news to lure people here and then killed them." The old man replied. "I see." The Sword Immortal Avatar nodded slightly and said with a smile, "But you've come to the right place. There is indeed a Flying Star Sword token here. No matter what, I'm going to kill you next." The old man laughed as well. Yixian should have already killed many people. If he killed Yixian, he would be able to obtain a large amount of wealth. Even if he didn't have the Flying Star Sword token, this trip wouldn't have been in vain. "I'm afraid there's no one in the third heaven who can kill me." Yixian shook his head. Of course, the I he was referring to was the Sword Immortal Avatar. At the third heaven, half-step Dao Lords were considered kings at most. How could they possibly kill the Sword Immortal Avatar? "Then I'll give it a try." The old man's eyes flashed. He could also sense that Yixian was a half-step Dao Lord. However, it had been countless years since he broke through to the half-step Dao Lord level. The Inferno Dao seed in his body had already reached the mid-early solidification stage. He was still quite strong and should have no problem dealing with Yixian. Unfortunately, he was wrong. Kill. At this moment, the old man finally made his move. He had comprehended two Daos. One was the Dao of Inferno, the other was the Dao of Frost. The Dao of Inferno and the Dao of Frost were embryonic forms of Grand Daos and Saint Daos, so they could be cultivated continuously. The old man had ice in one hand and flames in the other as he charged towards Yixian. In this battle, Yixian did not intend to summon the Blaziator Unicorn. This was because he had just broken through to the half-step Dao Lord level and wanted to test his strength. Currently, he had comprehended two Daos. One was the Dao of Inferno, while the other was the Dao of Devouring. Unfortunately, the Dao of Devouring did not seem to have any effect on him. On the other hand, the Inferno Dao seed greatly increased his fire attack power and fire immunity by several times. Rumble. In an instant, Yixian and the old man exchanged blows. Both of them had Inferno Dao seeds in their bodies. The old man had an additional Frost Dao seed, while Yixian had an additional Devouring Dao seed. This was not the main point. The main point was that the old man's Inferno Dao seed was already at the mid-early solidification stage. In other words, the old man was a second-grade half-step Dao Lord. However, after the two of them exchanged blows, the old man was instantly sent flying. Previously, when Yixian was in the slaughter state, his combat strength was increased by more than 30 times. Coupled with the Peerless Sword, Yixian had the ability to fight opponents more than 10 levels above him. However, this increase did not seem to be of much use to half-step Dao Lords. What mattered now was one's comprehension of the Dao. The enhancement of the sacred power and physique wasn't very obvious, and there weren't many half-step Dao Lords who would focus on improving these two attributes. Most people would focus on deepening their understanding of the Dao. For half-step Dao Lords who had grasped the Dao of Inferno, they could use flames to explode beneath their feet and gain extremely high movement speed. If they had comprehended the Dao of Gale, it would be even more terrifying. The reason why Yixian had the upper hand in this exchange and sent the old man flying with a single strike was not because of the enhancements. Instead, it was because of Yixian's immortal Phoenix bloodline and immortal Unicorn bloodline's flame amplification. Although Yixian's cultivation was lower than the old man's, After being strengthened by the immortal phoenix bloodline and immortal unicorn bloodline, the power of his flames was actually stronger than the old man's. This was why he was able to break through the old man's flame defense with a single strike and send him flying. Although sacred power and physique can increase my speed, most people have already comprehended the Tao of Inferno, so they are relatively useless. My Inferno Tao seed is only at the early solidification stage. Fortunately, I have the immortal phoenix bloodline and immortal unicorn bloodline, so my flames are stronger than his. Yi Xian thought to himself. It seemed that he had to strengthen his immortal unicorn bloodline and immortal phoenix bloodline next. If the slaughter state and one-hit kill also had an effect on the Tao, then that single strike would have been enough to kill the 10 old men. When the old man saw that his first strike had failed, he immediately understood that Yi Xian was not someone to be trifled with. He hurriedly turned and fled. After all, a Tier 1 half-step Tao Lord sending a Tier 2 half-step Tao Lord flying wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Moreover, Yi Xian had also comprehended the Tao of raging flames. You want to run now? Too late. The sword immortal clone's eyes flashed. Flames exploded beneath his feet as he shot towards the old man. Chapter 2016. After the old man died, the sword immortal clone glared at the corpse and extinguished the flames. Yi Xian hurried over and put the corpse into the devouring space. He then analyzed the Inferno Tao seed and the Frost Tao seed. Since I can devour the Inferno Tao seed to break through to half-step Tao Lord, I should be able to devour the Inferno Tao seed to improve my understanding of the Inferno Tao. Yi Xian thought to himself as he devoured the Inferno Tao seed. As expected, his understanding of the Inferno Tao seed had improved. If others knew about this, they would be shocked to death. One had to know that after a normal person obtained a Tao seed, they would at most use it to comprehend it. They wouldn't be like Yi Xian, who would directly devour it to increase their comprehension. This meant that Yi Xian's improvement speed would be much faster than others. If a person fully comprehended a Tao seed at the mid-stage initial condensation realm, they would be able to reach the mid-stage initial condensation realm. However, according to past experience, even if I devour a mid-stage initial condensation realm Tao seed, it would only increase my experience. It would not allow me to reach the mid-stage initial condensation realm. Yi Xian thought to himself. After all, he had much more experience than ordinary people. This old man's Inferno Tao seed was at the mid-stage initial condensation realm, but his Frost Tao seed was at the early stage initial condensation realm. A half-step Tao Lord could form multiple Tao seeds, but they had to be careful. Yi Xian devoured the Frost Tao seed, and another Frost Tao seed appeared in his body. Not only that, but even the old tree had one. It seemed that Tao seeds were indeed shared. However, the Frost Tao seed did not seem to be of much use to Yi Xian. Although the Frost Tao was an embryonic form of the Saint Tao, and could be improved to the Saint Tao in the future, Yi Xian was used to using flames. Now that he had a devouring Tao seed, he had to choose his third Tao seed carefully. He was not interested in the Frost Tao. However, since he could devour the Tao seed and form a corresponding Tao seed, it did not matter. If there was one, he would devour it. Perhaps he could improve first? At this moment, ding! Devouring other Tao seeds can improve your understanding of the devouring Tao seed. Suddenly, a system notification rang out. Yi Xian was stunned for a moment before he closed his eyes and tried to sense it. In the next moment, the icy Tao seed was absorbed by the devouring Tao seed. Previously, Yi Xian had thought that the devouring Tao seed could be increased by devouring things. Now, it seemed that aside from this method, he could also use the devouring Tao seed a second time to increase his experience. In that case, those useless items and Tao seeds could be used to upgrade the devouring Tao seed. In that case, the devouring Tao seed would be the fastest to upgrade. Following that, Yi Xian built another teleportation gate and continued to stand guard. However, this region wasn't particularly bustling, and there were very few half-step Tao Lords here. After dealing with yet another half-step Tao Lord in Yi Xian who had mastered the Tao of the Inferno, he prepared to leave. But at this moment, suddenly a powerful aura descended. The Sword Immortal Avatar raised his eyebrows and turned his head to see a person dressed in flying rainbow Tao Right's attire flying towards him. That's the protector of the flying rainbow Taoist right. Yi Xian recognized him at a glance. The protectors of the flying rainbow Taoist right were all half-step Tao Lords at the very least. Finally, a decent person had arrived. Without another word, Yixian charged over. What a fellow! You're targeting me? The flying rainbow Dao Rights Protector raised an eyebrow. He thought that Yixian wanted to kill him and steal his treasure. However, this was indeed the case. Immortal Slaying Breath Slash. Yixian's eyes flashed as he unleashed an attack that contained the Dao of the Inferno. The Inferno Dao of the Inferno is equivalent to mid-early cold time. Not bad, but you're dreaming if you think you can kill me with this attack. The flying rainbow Dao Rights Protector raised an eyebrow, then casually slapped out with a giant palm of flames. No, this wasn't a giant palm of flames. There were even traces of lightning on this giant flaming palm. This person had mastered both the Dao of the Inferno and the Dao of Lightning. When the two were combined, his attack was extremely ferocious. In an instant, Yixian's attack was defeated. As expected of the flying rainbow Dao Rights Protector, I'm afraid that his Dao Seed of Ice and Dao Seed of Lightning have both reached mid-early cold time. He's much stronger than ordinary second-grade half-step Dao Lords. Yixian frowned. It was much more difficult to raise one's Dao Seed from mid-early cold time to late-early cold time. Therefore, many people would choose to condense a second Dao Seed and raise it to mid-early cold time. This way their strength would increase faster. Although their realm wouldn't increase, they would still surpass ordinary people of the same level. A mere first-grade half-step Dao Lord dares to attack me? You're courting death. The flying rainbow Dao Rights Protector roared angrily and attacked again, directly hitting the sword Immortal Clone and sending him flying. However, when the flame dissipated, the Protector didn't see the sword Immortal Clone. Where are you looking at? Suddenly, a voice rang out behind him. At this moment, the sword Immortal Clone had already used the Eye of Assassination and appeared behind the Protector. Then he slashed out with his sword. Bam! The Protector's Thunderfire armor's defense was quite strong, and it blocked the sword. Someone who had comprehended two Daos had extraordinary combat strength. Even an attack that fused the power of fire and the power of devouring couldn't hurt him. However, this still couldn't stop Yixian. Suddenly, the void split open, and Yixian's true body descended. It was now 2 against 1. Moreover, Yixian, who was wearing the Void Spirit Godly armor, was even stronger than the sword Immortal Clone. Although the Void Spirit Godly armor's amplification wasn't very useful, it couldn't be forgotten that the Void Spirit Godly armor also had an invisibility effect and was completely immune to energy attacks like this. The flying rainbow Dao Rights Protector strength was considered top tier among second-grade half-step Dao Lords. Only a small number of people who had comprehended 3 Daos were stronger than him. Therefore, Yixian still spent a lot of time dealing with him. This battle lasted for a full half a minute. Both sides had exchanged countless blows. After half a minute, the Protector was finally no match for Yixian and was killed. After he died, Yixian hurriedly rushed over and put away the corpse. Yixian devoured the mid-early condensing Inferno Dao Seed. As for the mid-early condensing Thunder Dao Seed, Yixian condensed a Thunder Dao Seed in his body. Then, Yixian had the Devouring Dao Seed devour the Thunder Dao Seed to increase its experience. After that, Yixian threw the corpse to the mask and disguised himself as the Protector. So that's how it is. The Flying Star Sword token is the key to opening Dao Lord Flying Star's cave abode. There are 9 of them in total, and they are in the hands of the various major dojos. The Flying Star Sword token in my hand is the 9th one. Yixian thought to himself. Dao Lord Flying Star wasn't actually a Dao Lord. He was just a half-step Dao Lord. However, he had comprehended a Dao that countless people couldn't comprehend. Chapter 2017. The Sword Dao was also one of the 9 sacred Daos. However, unlike the Dao of Fire and the Dao of Ice, the Sword Dao was ranked at the top of the 9 sacred Daos and was extremely powerful. Therefore, Dao Lord Flying Star's Sword Dao Seed attracted the attention of all the major dojos. The Devouring Dao Seed is easier to improve. The Dao of Fire is also good, but the only one that can be used in battle is the Dao of Fire. If I can obtain this Sword Dao Seed, my strength will increase by leaps and bounds. Yixian narrowed his eyes as he thought. Clearly, he was also interested in this Sword Dao Seed. After all, he also had the bloodline of a Sword Immortal. If he could obtain this Sword Dao Seed, his strength would increase greatly. He immediately disguised himself as Wu Xinghai, the guardian of Flying Rainbow Dojo, and then broke through the void to return. He had been to Flying Rainbow Dojo once before, so there was a mark. When he arrived at Flying Rainbow Dojo, a person immediately came to greet him and asked, "Guardian Wu, did you gain anything this time?" "Yes. It said that there's news of the Flying Star Sword token in Sai Valley." Yixian nodded. "Then you?" the Guardian asked curiously. Since there was news, why did Wu Xinghai return? "That person is also a half-step Dao Lord, but he's very strong. It said that a second-grade half-step Dao Lord has already fallen, so I came back to find someone to go with me just in case," Yixian said deliberately. This time it was actually the Sword Immortal clone who was using the Mask of Truth. The Void Spirit Divine Armor did not have any amplification effect on the Sword Immortal clone, but it did not mean that he could not use other magic treasures. Yixian was more assured that he would disguise himself and enter. As for his true body, it was actually still waiting in Sai Valley, waiting for some people to come to him. Even Guardian Wu admits that he's not a match. Seems that he's a tough character. "Wait a moment, I'll call Guardian Lian. The three of us will go together." The Guardian left after saying that, but not long after, he came back with another person. Both of them were second-grade half-step Dao Lords, but Wu Xinghai was still the strongest in terms of individual strength. Then, the three of them left together and headed to Sai Valley. With their speed, they would arrive in about 2 to 3 days. During this time, some people found Sai Valley, but they were all a group of invincible heaven monarchs. There were only 2 half-step Dao Lords, and both were first-rank half-step Dao Lords. However, Yixian was still able to acquire quite a few Dao seeds. 2.5 days later, the Sword Immortal Avatar arrived with the 2 guardians of Flying Rainbow Dao. "Right. Protector Wu, this is Sai Valley, right? Where is that person?" Protector Lian asked. The Sword Celestial clone paused for a moment before saying, "I left a lightning fire imprint on him, yet he's still here. How bold of him. Let's go." After saying that, he took the lead and rushed forward. The 2 protectors looked at each other and hurriedly followed. However, at this moment, hoo! Behind the 2 of them, a gust of wind suddenly rose up, and a terrifying aura instantly spread out. Yixian's true body had already donned the Void Spirit Divine Armor. He immediately used the Eye of Assassination to appear behind them. Bang! The 2 of them were caught off guard and had no time to react. That meant that Elder Lian was killed. Before the other person could defend, the Sword Immortal Avatar, who had put away the mask of authenticity and revealed his true body, also stabbed with his sword. That sword pierced into the other person's heart, instantly killing him. Yixian had obtained 3 more Dao seeds, 2 of which were Blazing Inferno Dao seeds. Not bad. One of them is a Gale Dao seed. No wonder he can fly so fast. A Blazing Inferno Dao seed and a Gale Dao seed. He's probably as difficult to deal with as Wu Xinghai. Yixian thought to himself as he devoured the Gale Dao seed. However, he didn't let the Devouring Dao seed devour the Gale Dao seed because it could increase his speed and fuse with his attacks. That's right. Ordinary people wouldn't condense so many Dao seeds, but I can. If I have more than 10 Dao seeds in my body, then any casual attack of mine will be extremely powerful. Yixian's eyes lit up. However, this would be a bit difficult. It wasn't difficult to fuse a fire attack and a lightning attack, but it would be difficult to add a wind blade attack. It would be even more difficult to add an ice attack. Next, Yixian disguised himself as another person and returned to Flying Rainbow Daoist Dojo to lure 2 Dao seeds back. The same place, the same move, the same ending. However, this time Yixian had gained quite a lot. The 2 of them had 4 Dao seeds. 2 were Blazing Inferno Dao seeds, while the other 2 were Frost Dao seeds and Strength Dao seeds. However, the Strength Dao wasn't one of the 9 sacred Das. It was only an embryonic form of the 3,000 sacred Das. However, they were only half-step Dao Lords now. They were far from being Dao Lords, so there was no need to be so calculative. When one had a deep understanding of the Strength Dao, they could still unleash a considerable amount of power when combined with the explosive speed of the Blazing Inferno Dao seed. However, the Strength Dao was a bit unorthodox compared to the other Das. Moreover, it was much weaker at the same level. The Strength Dao of the early Solidification Dao seed was probably only slightly stronger than the Blazing Inferno Dao seed. Although I'm wearing the Void Spirit Divine Armor, it's only immune to energy attacks. If the enemy attacks me directly, I'll still be in danger. Yi Xian thought to himself. The time reversal skill was indeed useful, but it would be a tragedy if he triggered a mission that didn't allow him to use it. Thus, Yi Xian had to be careful of such unorthodox Daos in the future. Next, Yi Xian devoured the Frost Dao Seed and Strength Dao Seed. Ding! The Devouring Dao Seed has been raised to the Early Solidification Dao Seed. Ding! Host has broken through to the second rank half-step Dao Lord. He had finally broken through. However, the breakthrough was because the Devouring Dao Seed had been raised to the Early Solidification Dao Seed, while the Blazing Inferno Dao Seed was still at the Early Solidification Dao Seed. Thus, the increase in strength wasn't as crazy as expected. However, it was still good enough to kill anyone he had killed before. The Flying Rainbow Taoist Dojo's Taoist Lord is a 4th rank half-step Dao Lord. With my current strength, it shouldn't be a problem for me to kill my way in. Yi Xian thought to himself. Previously, the Flying Rainbow Taoist Dojo had destroyed the Gold Plume Dojo in order to obtain the Flying Star Sword token. They had even captured countless people from the Gold Plume Dojo. This time, he was here to seek revenge. At this moment, he had already broken through the void and arrived in front of the Flying Rainbow Taoist Dojo. This time, as long as he succeeded in destroying the Flying Rainbow Taoist Dojo, he might be able to complete the 6th chain of the Sex Chain mission. This mission required Yi Xian to become a half-step Dao Lord, and the Connecting Cloud Taoist Dojo had to have 107-star disciples. After countless generations of reproduction, Yi Xian now had more than 10 7-star disciples. Chapter 2018. What's the matter, sir? Seeing Yi Xian hovering in the air in front of the Flying Rainbow Dojo, a disciple of the Flying Rainbow Dojo immediately stepped forward and asked. Yi Xian glanced at him, then took out the Flying Star Sword token and said, "The 9th Flying Star Sword token is in my hands. Get your Dao Lord to come out and talk." The Flying Star Sword token? What's that? The disciple looked at Yi Xian strangely, not understanding what the Flying Star Sword token was. It was not his fault because only the elite disciples, protectors, and elders knew what it was. Since you don't know, let's go in. Yi Xian's eyes flickered as he summoned Black Horn and Old Tree. Now that they had the ability to devour, they charged in directly. Immediately, the number of people in the Flying Rainbow Dojo decreased continuously. As for Yi Xian, he also charged in wearing the Void Spirit Divine Armor. Which scoundrel dares to behave so atrociously in the Flying Rainbow Dojo? A loud shout was heard. Hearing this, Yi Xian did not even turn his head and said, "The Flying Star Sword token is in my hands. Someone speak up." His voice was deafening, and it spread throughout the entire Flying Rainbow Dojo. The Flying Star Sword token? How could this protector not know about this thing? He immediately tried to snatch it, wanting to claim credit. However, in the next moment, he was killed by Yi Xian with a single strike, and his 2 Taoist seeds were directly devoured. When they heard Yi Xian's voice, the protectors, elders, and Dao Lord Fei Hong instantly appeared and surrounded Yi Xian. "The 9th Flying Star Sword token has come to us on its own accord?" Dao Lord Fei Hong was in disbelief and felt that this matter was a little strange. "Who are you? How dare you kill a protector of the Flying Rainbow Dojo?" Dao Lord Fei Hong said coldly. "Cut the crap. If you want the Flying Star Sword token, then come and get it." The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. "Kid, don't be so arrogant. How dare a mere 2nd-grade half-step Dao Lord act so arrogantly in front of our Dao Lord? You'll die a horrible death," an elder from the Flying Rainbow Dojo said. Yi Xian glanced at him, and then he glanced at the other quasi-Dao Lords and said, "Since none of you are going to do anything, I'll do it." As his voice faded, he had already made his move. His true body, Sword Immortal Avatar, Flame-Swallowing Unicorn, and Black Horn were together. "How dare you? Let me do it." The elder roared angrily, but in the next moment, Yi Xian and the other 3 disappeared and reappeared around him, surrounding him. "Die!" Yi Xian and the other 3 attacked at the same time. All of their attacks were directed at the elder. The 3rd-ranked Dao Lord Elder was instantly slain, and his corpse quickly vanished without a trace. Yi Xian's Ardent Inferno Dao Seed had finally risen to the mid-initial condensing stage after devouring the late initial condensing stage Ardent Inferno Dao Seed. Its attack power had increased. Black Horn, Old Tree, and the others had shared their Dao seeds with Yi Xian, so their ardent inferno Dao seed had risen from the early initial condensing stage to the mid-initial condensing stage. Before anyone could react, Yi Xian used the assassin's eye to flash behind another elder. Boom! After another round of attacks, this elder fell in an instant as well. The Flying Rainbow Dojo only had 2 third-rank quasi-Dao lords, but now both of them had died. Oh, it's a soul-devouring Dao seed. Yi Xian raised an eyebrow in surprise. He had heard of the soul-devouring Dao seed once before, and that was Dao Lord Goldfeather. It was a relatively rare Dao seed, but it was only an embryonic form of a grand Dao. Now Yi Xian could already fuse the Ardent Inferno Dao seed, Devouring Dao seed and Thunderous Dao seed. If he added the soul-devouring Dao seed that could harm one's soul, his attack power would be even stronger. You're courting death. At this moment Dao Lord Fei Hong finally understood. He directly transformed into a ray of light and charged towards Yi Xian. Dao Lord Fei Hong was so fast that Yi Xian was shocked. However, the latter had heard that Dao Lord Fei Hong had comprehended the Gale Dao, and had already reached the early initial stage of lesser mastery. He was very strong. But so what? Slap! Dao Lord Fei Hong instantly appeared in front of Yi Xian and slapped Yi Xian's Void Spirit Divine Armor. This palm strike was Dao Lord Fei Hong's ultimate technique. It had fused the Gale Dao into it. As long as it hit the enemy, countless wind blades would form in the enemy's body and break out of the enemy's body. Dao Lord Fei Hong had once used this move to kill a 4th-rank half-step Dao Lord. Unfortunately, Yi Xian was wearing the Void Spirit Divine Armor, so the attack was instantly blocked. The palm strike was also blocked by the Void Spirit Divine Armor's physical defense. Yi Xian was unscathed. How is this possible? Dao Lord Fei Hong was shocked to see Yi Xian unscathed. Before he could react, Yi Xian and Old Tree attacked. Boom! The wind howled. Fortunately, Dao Lord Fei Hong had used his extraordinary speed to dodge the attack. Since Yi Xian couldn't do it, he would attack the others. However, it was still useless. After being hit by the 2 palm strikes, Black Horn and Old Tree were indeed torn to pieces by the wind blades that came out of their bodies. But in the blink of an eye, the 2 of them reappeared. As for the Sword Immortal clone, it was a truly invincible existence. Even if Dao Lord Fei Hong was 100 or 1,000 times stronger, he still wouldn't be able to kill it. Dao Lord Fei Hong's strength is extraordinary. I should deal with the others first. Yi Xian thought to himself as he continued to attack. In less than a few seconds, the group of 1st-rank and 2nd-rank half-step Dao Lords were all killed. Then, their corpses were collected and their Dao seeds were stripped. Yi Xian's understanding of the Dao had deepened, so his combat strength naturally increased. Bastard! Seeing this, Dao Lord Fei Hong couldn't help but curse at the sky. If all these protectors and elders died, wouldn't he be the only half-step Dao Lord left in the Flying Rainbow Dojo? I'll kill you! Dao Lord Fei Hong had already gone crazy and attacked Yi Xian. However, his attacks were not effective at all, so he became more and more angry. As a result, half a minute later he actually went berserk. Dao Lord Fei Hong was in a daze. He didn't attack Yi Xian anymore, and instead attacked the group of disciples below. The Dao Lord is killing the disciples. What's going on? Run! The Dao Lord is going berserk. Run! Even Yi Xian didn't expect this scene because in his original plan, he wanted to exhaust Dao Lord Fei Hong to death. Unexpectedly, the other party actually went berserk and started a massacre. Hurry up and stop him! Yi Xian shouted. Among the disciples of the Flying Rainbow Dojo, there might be a 7-star disciple. They couldn't let Dao Lord Fei Hong kill them. At that moment, Yi Xian and the Sword Immortal clone hurriedly delayed Dao Lord Fei Hong. Then, Black Horn and Old Tree took the disciples who weren't even half-step Dao Lords into the Devouring space. Chapter 2019. Kill, I want to kill. Dao Lord Fei Hong muttered as he attacked. His combat strength had increased significantly. However, after he went berserk, a flaw appeared. After fighting for a while, Dao Lord Fei Hong realized that Yi Xian was not easy to deal with, so he turned around and prepared to leave. Old Tree, kill him! Yi Xian immediately gave the order. Old Tree understood and opened its mouth, spitting out a purplish-black flame. 9-fold heaven-devouring flame. Boom! Dao Lord Fei Hong was held back by Yi Xian, and the Sword Immortal clone, so he could not dodge and took the hit. As for Yi Xian and the Sword Immortal clone, they were immune to this attack, so it did not matter. This attack severely injured Tao Lord Fei Hong and greatly reduced his strength. Soon he was besieged and killed by Yi Xian and the others. Looking at the slowly falling corpse, Yi Xian quickly put it away and used the system to analyze it and extract the Tao Lord Fei Hong's Tao Lord seed. An early-stage Lesser Mastery Gale Tao Lord seed and a late-stage Lesser Mastery Tao Lord seed. Yi Xian raised an eyebrow. No wonder Tao Lord Fei Hong went berserk. It turned out that he had condensed a Tao Lord seed. This could increase the strength of one's soul, but it could also cause one to go berserk. Yi Xian directly devoured the Gale Tao Lord seed and raised his Gale Tao Lord seed to mid-stage Lesser Mastery. As for the Tao Lord seed, Yi Xian gave it to the Devouring Tao Lord seed for a second Devouring. Although both Tao Lord seeds could be given to the Devouring Tao Lord seed for a second Devouring, Yi Xian felt that the effect of raising the Devouring Tao Lord seed to late-stage Lesser Mastery was not as great as raising the Gale Tao Lord seed to late-stage Lesser Mastery. Although the Devouring Tao Lord seed could devour other Tao Lord seeds a second time, if Yi Xian directly devoured the Gale Tao Lord seed, the Gale Tao Lord seed in his body would definitely gain more experience than the Devouring Tao Lord seed. Perhaps this Gale Tao seed was the reason why Yi Xian had broken through to become a demi-step Tao Lord of the 3rd rank. Now Yi Xian had already destroyed the Flying Rainbow Dojo, and all the disciples had been absorbed into his devouring space. However, what made him feel helpless was that the number of 7-star disciples had only reached 40. Multiply, continue to multiply. I don't believe that I can't gather 100 disciples with 7-star aptitude. Yi Xian immediately took out a large amount of heaven and earth treasures to devour the inhabitants of the space. Relatively speaking, those with high cultivation bases would have better aptitude in their descendants. Yi Xian reckoned that this quest would be completed in a period of time. However, there was no Flying Star Sword token in Tao Lord Fei Hong's Cosmos Ring. Yi Xian quickly asked Wei Zhentian to search Tao Master Fei Hong's soul. He discovered that Tao Master Fei Hong didn't obtain the Flying Star Sword token. He was only looking for it for a large Tao sect. As long as he could find the Flying Star Sword token, the Great Tao Hall would reward him handsomely. No matter what, the enmity of the annihilation of the Golden Feather Temple could be considered half avenged. Crimson Firmament Tao Hall, Crimson Fire Tao Hall, Golden Lion Tao Hall. Yi Xian learned quite a few things from Tao Lord Fei Hong's memories. The other 8 Flying Star Sword tokens were in the hands of the Tao Lords of these Tao Halls. Now that the 9th Flying Star Sword token has appeared, these Tao Lords will definitely come searching for it, and then open the Flying Star Estate. Yi Xian decided that since that was the case, he might as well deliver himself to them. He immediately set off on his journey, leaving the Soaring Rainbow Tao Hall and heading for the Golden Lion Tao Hall that was closest to him. This Golden Lion Tao Hall was 10 times stronger than the Soaring Rainbow Tao Hall. It was more than enough for him to explore the Flying Star Estate. After a series of teleportations, Yi Xian finally arrived near the Golden Lion Tao Hall. Then Yi Xian sent his Sword Immortal clone out. Although the Sword Immortal clone of a 2nd-rank half-step Tao Lord wasn't as strong as a 4th-rank half-step Tao Lord, it was enough to take care of most 3rd-rank half-step Tao Lords. Most importantly, it was invincible. Soon, the Sword Immortal clone entered the Golden Lion Tao Hall. Golden Lion Tao Hall. The 9th Flying Star Sword token is in my hands. A thunderous roar rang out in the air above the Golden Lion Tao Hall. Immediately, all of the Tao Lords, Elders, and Tao Lords appeared. The 9th Flying Star Sword token? Tao Lord Golden Lion narrowed his eyes and actually attacked, preparing to kill the Sword Immortal clone and steal the token. Unfortunately, the Sword Immortal clone was invincible. His attacks couldn't do anything to him. He didn't die. Tao Lord Golden Lion couldn't believe it and attacked with all his might. Rumble! A series of explosions rang out in the Golden Lion Tao Hall. What was surprising was that the Sword Immortal clone of a 2nd-rank half-step Tao Lord was actually able to take all of Tao Lord Golden Lion's attacks head-on. Unbelievable! Since you can't kill me, why don't we sit down and talk? The Sword Immortal clone cracked a smile. How do you want to talk? Tao Lord Golden Lion narrowed his eyes. It's simple. I want you and the others with the Flying Star Sword token to open the Flying Star Estate together. Since you want this Flying Star Sword token, you should have more say in this matter. So long as I enter the estate, I'll give you this flying star sword token. The sword immortal clone said. That's simple. Dao Lord Golden Lion didn't quite believe it. Of course not. This flying star sword token is essentially a gift to you. I need you to use your Dao seeds. As for the flying star sword token, I'll give it to you after we enter. The sword immortal clone shook his head. What Dao seeds do you need? Dao Lord Golden Lion asked. 100 middle stage early stage Dao seeds of Inferno, Dao seeds of Gale, Dao seeds of Thunderclap, and 1,000 of other types. Yi Xian immediately listed out his conditions. Dao Lord Golden Lion was rather surprised to hear this. You're already a second-rank half-step Dao Lord. Why would you need these Dao seeds? Mid-stage early stage Dao seeds could be given to others to meditate on, but only a single one was needed. This many Dao seeds could only be given to multiple people at the same time. They couldn't be stacked together. What did Yi Xian need so many Dao seeds for? You don't have to worry about that. That's all I want. It's up to you whether you want to trade or not, the sword immortal clone said. Alright, I'll have someone prepare these Dao seeds. However, we'll trade them at the entrance of the Flying Star Cave abode, Dao Lord Golden Lion said. Alright. Yi Xian immediately agreed. However, he didn't say the second half of what he wanted to say. Once they entered the Flying Star Cave abode, he would definitely take revenge for what happened today. In that case, I'll inform the others immediately. Dao Lord Golden Lion turned around and said, arrange a place for him to stay. In truth, he was sending people to keep an eye on the sword immortal clone to prevent him from escaping. However, this worry was unnecessary. Yi Xian had taken the initiative to come here because he didn't want to have to search for the Flying Star Sword token one by one. After all, he only wanted to enter the Flying Star Cave abode. This way he would be able to enter very quickly. Sure enough, within a day, Dao Lord Golden Lion had finished organizing his people. As for the other 7 parties, they were all ready. Chapter 2020. Yi Xian followed the group from the Golden Lion dojo and saw the people from the other factions. The other 7 factions were all powerful dojos that weren't any weaker than the Golden Lion dojo. The strongest among them was a peak 6th grade half-step Dao Lord. He was only 1 step away from becoming a high-grade half-step Dao Lord. Golden Lion, I didn't expect you to get the last Flying Star Sword token. One of the Dao Lords walked over. We've discussed it before. We'll enter together and split the loot into 9 portions. The Golden Lion dojo will take 2 portions. Dao Lord Golden Lion said. No problem. Everyone nodded. Then they entered the entrance of the Flying Star abode and placed the Flying Star Sword tokens one by one. After a while, it was the 9th Flying Star Sword token's turn. What you want is in the interspatial ring. Dao Lord Golden Lion tossed an interspatial ring to Yi Xian. After checking it, the latter tossed the Flying Star Sword token over. Then the door to the Flying Star Cave abode opened with a rumble. Dao Lord Golden Lion had wanted to kill Yi Xian and steal the Flying Star Sword token's treasures. However, when he saw how Yi Xian was able to withstand so many of his attacks without being injured, he realized that Yi Xian had a powerful background. Therefore, after the door to the Flying Star Cave abode opened, he didn't want to bother with Yi Xian anymore. After all, those Daoist seeds weren't very useful to people like them. Those Daoist seeds were left behind by dead half-step Dao Lords. There were still many of them in the dojos. Exchanging them for the Flying Star Sword token was definitely a profitable deal. After all, if Yi Xian went to other dojos, the other Dao Lords would definitely do the same. At this time, everyone's eyes were on the open door. Yi Xian, who had obtained a large number of Daoist seeds, smiled slightly. He thought to himself, this many Daoist seeds is enough. Soon enough, all 8 dojos entered the Flying Star Cave abode, and he followed them in. The ceiling of the Flying Star Cave abode was actually a starry sky. However, everyone knew that it was an illusion formation. Then they began to explore the cave together. As for Yi Xian, after looking around, he began to break through. Ding! The Devouring Dao seed has been upgraded to late initial condensation stage. Ding! The host has broken through to become a 3rd-rank half-step Dao Lord. Ding! The Raging Inferno Dao seed has been upgraded to late initial condensation stage. Ding! The Thunderous Dao seed has been upgraded to late initial condensation stage. Ding! The Gale Dao seed has been upgraded to late initial condensation stage. After Yixian devoured all the Dao seeds, he successfully broke through. If he only devoured the Dao seeds to reach the late initial condensation stage, his strength would indeed increase. If all the Dao seeds were to reach the late initial condensation stage, his strength would increase by several times. After breaking through, he would probably be able to fuse the attacks of other Dao seeds. Devour, Inferno, Thunderclap, and Gale. The fusion of these 4 Dao seeds was most likely enough to threaten even a half-step Dao Lord. When he continued to break through and fuse with more Dao seeds, his ability to challenge those of a higher level would also continue to increase. Alright, it's time to act. The Sword-type Dao seed is one of the top-ranked Dao seeds of the 9 sacred Das. Moreover, it might even be a greater mastery Dao seed. If I devour it, I'll definitely break through again. Yixian thought to himself as he randomly chose a direction to advance. Dao Lord Flying Star was an advanced half-step Dao Lord. That meant that at least one of his Dao seeds was at the early stage of greater mastery. If Yixian obtained it, although he wouldn't be able to form an early stage of greater mastery Dao seed, he would at least be able to form a lesser mastery Dao seed, right? Yixian's true body was wearing the Void Spirit Divine Armor as he shuttled through the Flying Star Cave abode. As for the Old Tree, Black Horn, and the Sword Immortal clone, they had already split up. After a while, they actually gathered together and looked at the stone tablet in front of them. There are a total of 9 paths ahead. Each path leads to a Meteor Palace, and in each Meteor Palace, there is an incomplete chapter of the Meteor Sword Art. Only those who have learned the Meteor Sword Art are qualified to enter Dao Lord Meteor's tomb chamber. Yixian raised an eyebrow. Flying Star Sword technique? It was the first time he had heard of such a thing. However, with Yixian's intelligence, it wasn't difficult for him to understand this. Dao Lord Flying Star should have used the Flying Star Sword technique to form that Sword Dao seed. Yixian didn't think too much about it and directly stepped into the first path. After a while, he arrived at the first palace. Coincidentally, there was no one inside. In the palace, there was indeed an incomplete martial art manual. Yixian directly copied it down. Unfortunately, it was only an incomplete manual. Therefore, even if he mastered it, he wouldn't be able to use the Flying Star Sword technique. Then Yixian went to the second palace and copied it down. There were people from other dojos in the second palace, but they were all focused on studying the incomplete Flying Star Sword technique and didn't have time to pay attention to him. In the end, Yixian strolled all the way to the 9th palace. It just so happened that the Golden Lion Dojo was in this palace. Ding! The 9th incomplete manual of the Flying Star Sword technique has been copied successfully. Ding! The host confused the incomplete manual. Do you want to proceed? Yes. When Yixian's voice fell, the Immortal Grade Devouring system merged the 9 incomplete manuals of the Flying Star Sword technique into the real Flying Star Sword technique. It turned out that the Flying Star Sword technique was a real Dao formula, which meant that it was a Dao Lord level martial art. It was not a quasi-Dao formula of a half-step Dao Lord level. Then Yixian directly learned it. Ding! The host has learned the Flying Star Sword technique. The system notified. Now Yixian could move on. No one would have thought that Yixian would learn the Flying Star Sword technique in less than half a day after entering the Flying Star Cave abode. It was unbelievable. One had to know that this technique was very difficult to understand even for the Golden Lion Sect Master. It would take many years for him to learn it. At this time, Yixian directly ignored the gazes of the others and entered the door at the end of the 9th palace. Hey, that kid entered the 9th palace's door. He's courting death. Just now, Elder Cho entered and was killed by the sword puppet in less than 3 moves. Entering without learning the Flying Star Sword technique is suicide. Not necessarily. That guy's background must be extraordinary since even the sect master can't do anything to him. Maybe he can escape unscathed. The people of the Golden Lion Dojo were discussing. At this time, Yixian had entered the door at the end of the 9th palace and arrived at a small hall. In this small hall, there was only a puppet holding a sword. There was no one else. However, there was a corpse with its head cut off. Use the Flying Star Sword technique to defeat the sword puppet in front of you before you can move on. An unfamiliar voice came from the small hall. Yixian did not hesitate and took out the Sure-Kill sword. The sword puppet sensed that Yixian was ready and charged with its sword. Its strength was only at the level of a third-grade half-step Dao Lord, the same as Yi Xian. Chapter 2021. Simply put, as long as one learned the Flying Star sword art and used the sword techniques in it, one could easily pass the trial. Of course, if the one who came was a 6th-rank half-step Dao Lord, then the sword puppet would be a 6th-rank half-step Dao Lord. The door wasn't closed, but there was a formation around it that prevented the Golden Lion Dojo members from entering. They were waiting to see how Yi Xian would be killed. However, what they wanted to see didn't happen. After the sword puppet moved, Yi Xian moved as well. Yi Xian was using the Flying Star sword art. Clang! 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 A series of crisp sounds rang out. Yi Xian was actually fighting the sword puppet. The group outside the door was shocked. An elder from the Golden Lion Dojo had just entered, but he had been killed in just 3 rounds. And now Yi Xian had actually lasted 6 rounds. Impossible! Has this kid already learned the Flying Star sword art? What kind of joke is this? The Flying Star Cave has only been open for half a day. How could he have learned it? Didn't they say that one had to memorize the 9 incomplete chapters before they could complete the Flying Star sword art? Has this guy already run through all 9 palaces? Our Golden Lion Dojo and the other dojos worked together, and only managed to complete half of the Flying Star sword art. There's no way he has already completed it. The guardians and elders of the Golden Lion Dojo were in disbelief. Even the Golden Lion Dojo master was the same. But in the next moment their jaws almost fell to the ground. In the small hall, Yi Xian's sword pierced the sword puppet's throat. In the next moment, an unfamiliar voice rang out from the small hall. Congratulations! You've learned the Flying Star sword art. You can continue forward. As soon as he said this, the group of people behind the door were all shocked. Yi Xian had really fucking learned the Flying Star sword art. How was this possible? However, they could only watch as Yi Xian put away the corpse and walked forward without looking back. Although they didn't know why Yi Xian knew the Flying Star sword technique, they knew that Yi Xian was probably the first person to enter the tomb. At that moment, Yi Xian had already passed through the small hall. After walking for a while, he arrived at Dao Lord Meteor's tomb. There was nothing in this tomb except for a crystal coffin in the center. Yi Xian walked over and saw the corpse of a young man lying inside. Young man, the corpse of Dao Lord Flying Star lies in the crystal coffin. That unfamiliar voice sounded again. Greetings, senior. Yi Xian hurriedly greeted him. There's no need for formalities. The fact that you're here means that we're fated to meet. My most precious possession is the sword Dao Seed. However, before that, I have a request. Dao Lord Meteor said. Senior, please speak. I'm Dao Lord Flying Star. My name is Zhang Feixing. I'm a direct descendant of the Zhang family of Spiritual Light Sword City. Therefore, I want you to bring my corpse back and bury it with my mother. Dao Lord Flying Star said. The mission was very simple, so Yi Xian agreed immediately. Once I'm here. However, I have to remind you that I, Zhang Feixing, have done something that let down my family. That is, I stole a Dao weapon. Therefore, my name has been removed from the family. I'm afraid this last wish isn't that simple. Dao Lord Flying Star emphasized. No matter how difficult it is, I'll definitely complete it for you, senior. Yi Xian said confidently. Very well, I'll leave it to you then. As soon as Dao Lord Flying Star finished speaking, the crystal coffin opened automatically. Then, the interspatial ring on Dao Lord Flying Star's right hand flew out and landed in Yi Xian's hand. This interspatial ring contains everything I had when I was alive. The most precious thing is the sword Dao Seed and the Dao weapon Death Sword. However, this Death Sword is very important to the family. I stole it. If you bring my corpse back, you'll definitely be interrogated. Therefore, you can't expose yourself. Otherwise, your life will be in danger. Dao Lord Flying Star reminded him again. Yi Xian nodded slightly and checked the interspatial ring. There were many natural treasures, a sword-shaped Dao Seed, and a black longsword that emitted a sinister aura. It should be the Dao weapon that Dao Lord Flying Star mentioned, Death Sword. Without a word, Yi Xian devoured the sword Dao Seed. This sword Dao Seed was at the early stage of greater mastery. After Yi Xian devoured it, he directly condensed a sword Dao Seed at the early stage of lesser mastery. Ding! Host has broken through to become a grade 4 half-step Dao Lord. It's only at the early stage of lesser mastery. Yixian was a little disappointed. At the early stage of lesser mastery, he could only break through to become a grade 4 half-step Dao Lord. However, this was not bad. After all, this was a relatively rare sword Dao seed. Without talent, it was impossible to condense it. Alright, you can put away my corpse. Yes, senior. Yixian nodded and put away Dao Lord Flying Star's corpse. After that, there was no sound. Rumble. At this time, the door at the end of the hall opened again. However, this time, Yixian did not intend to leave. This death sword is a Dao weapon. This is a weapon used by Dao Lords. Judging from the aura it emits, if anyone is injured, they'll probably be killed instantly. Yixian thought to himself as he walked back the way he came. When he opened the door, he saw that the 9 paths were already clear. Then the people from the 8 dojos all rushed over. Where's the sword Dao seed? Dao Lord Golden Lion immediately asked when he saw Yixian. I've already refined it, Yixian answered honestly. Good boy. Although I don't know how you got it, you'd better hand over Dao Lord Flying Star's inheritance. Otherwise, you'll die a terrible death, a red-haired old man said. Yixian recognized him. He was the Dao Lord of Crimson Firmament Dojo, the strongest person present. If you want the inheritance, then come and take it. Yixian held the Peerless Sword in one hand and the Death Sword in the other. When the Death Sword appeared, everyone's eyes focused on it. This sword exudes a terrifying aura of death. Is it a Dao weapon? How can there be such a Dao weapon? How strange. Don't be careless. This kid doesn't look simple. What's so special about him? Watch me kill him. An elder suddenly took the initiative to attack Yixian. A mere grade 5 half-step Dao Lord dares to act arrogantly in front of me? You're courting death. Yixian's eyes flashed. In the next moment, his sword immortal clone appeared behind the elder. Flying Star Sword Art. Chain of 9 stars. Poof! An attack containing several Daos pierced through the elder's head, killing him instantly. A grade 5 half-step Dao Lord was killed instantly. Chapter 2022. Everyone attacked together. It was unknown who shouted this, but in the next moment this group of people charged over in unison. They all had the Flying Star Sword Art, but they only had a single Dao seed of the sword. It would belong to whoever won. These 100-odd people were at least 3rd-rank half-step Dao Lords, while the weakest of the Dao Lords were 5th-rank half-step Dao Lords. However, Yixian showed no fear in the face of this group of people. Yixian's true body, the sword immortal clone, Black Horn, and the old tree faced off against the rest. With the death sword in hand, Yixian could easily kill his opponents with a single blow. This death sword lives up to its name as a Dao weapon, can break through any kind of attack. It's too terrifying. Yixian thought to himself. Before long, the entire group was taken care of, leaving only the Dao Lords to hold on. Terrifying. Too terrifying. We have so many people, but we can't do anything to them. How are we supposed to fight? Damn it, I'm not fighting anymore. I'm leaving first. Bastard, you're actually deserting. Run my ass. If you want to die, go die by yourself. Immediately, 2 of the Dao Lords retreated. However, could they be faster than Yixian? Yixian and the sword immortal clone instantly appeared behind the 2 Dao Lords. Flying Star Sword Art. Chain of 9 stars. Yixian and the sword immortal clone attacked in unison. A total of 18 streaks of cold light flashed, and the 2 fleeing Dao Lords were instantly frightened. Block it for me. One of the Dao Lords roared. The sword immortal clone only had the Peerless Sword in his hand, so his attacks were much weaker than those of Yixian's true body. Thus his opponent didn't die on the spot. Instead, he was heavily injured by the sword art. However, the other Dao Lord wasn't as lucky. The chain of 9 stars sank into his body. Although it didn't injure his vitals, this attack was launched by Yixian using the death sword. The aura of death instantly spread out and obliterated the Dao Lord. In the blink of an eye, he was reduced to a pile of bones that fell to the ground. When everyone saw this, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva. The most terrifying thing was not the power of the sword Dao seed, but the black long sword. Your Excellency, please spare my life. I am willing to submit to you. The heavily injured Taoist master was so scared that he peed his pants and immediately shouted, Sorry, I don't need it. Yi Xian snorted and attacked again. As soon as the 9-star chain appeared, it was instantly killed. What a joke. Yi Xian did not dare to casually absorb people into his devouring space because of what had happened before. Although there were quite a few half-step Dao Lords within the devouring dimension, none of them had a higher level of insight into the Dao than he did. That way it would not pose a threat to the devouring space. When the other 5 Dao Masters saw the tragic deaths of the 2 Dao Masters, they immediately looked at each other and used their trump cards. Unfortunately, their attacks were completely useless against Yi Xian. If the attack were to land on the Sword Immortal Avatar, it would be able to repel it. However, if it were to land on Yi Xian, who was wearing the Void Spirit Divine Armor, it would instantly dissipate. In a short while, the 5 Dao Masters, including the Golden Lion Dao Master, were all dead and turned into eerie white bones. Then Yi Xian devoured all of their Dao seeds. The Devouring Dao Seed, the Blazing Dao Seed, and the others were all raised to the early stage of Lesser Mastery. Yi Xian had gained quite a lot from this trip to the Flying Star Cave abode. If he did not have a bit of integrity, he would have earned so much for nothing. However, since he had received Dao Lord Flying Star's favor, he naturally had to fulfill Dao Lord Flying Star's last wish, which was to bring the corpse and the Death Sword back to the spiritual Light Sword City. According to Dao Lord Flying Star's memories, the spiritual Light Sword City was in the northeast of this area, and the City Lord's mansion was the Zhang family. It was said that the City Lord, Zhang Lingguang, was a Dao Lord expert and was very powerful. The next part of the journey took Yi Xian a lot of time, a full month. After countless teleportations, he finally arrived at the spiritual Light Sword City. However, as soon as Yi Xian entered the spiritual Light Sword City, he heard that the spiritual Light Sword City was holding a sword competition. The reward was very generous. It was actually a sword Dao seed. As expected of the spiritual Light Sword City. How generous. They're giving out a sword Dao seed as a reward. Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. Previously, those dojos fought over a sword Dao seed, but they were all killed by him in the end. Now, the spiritual Light Sword City actually gave out a sword Dao seed as a reward for a random competition. It was already very impressive. Dao Lord Flying Star was one of the geniuses of the Zhang family. He was young, but he had already condensed a sword Dao seed. However, this did not mean that no one else in the Zhang family had condensed one. On the contrary, there were quite a few. The reward is actually a sword Dao seed at the middle stage of greater mastery. Not bad, not bad. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly, and then followed the crowd. Soon, he arrived at the big arena in the center of the spiritual Light Sword City. At this time, thousands of people had gathered here, and most of them were half-step Dao Lords. In the arena, there was a group of experts wearing the uniform of the spiritual Light Sword City's City Lord Mansion. Their realms were at least 5th grade half-step Dao Lords. This time, the City Lord Mansion has put in a lot of effort in order to recruit geniuses. As long as you can defeat 3 of the City Lord Mansion's geniuses, you can get a reward. This is a sword competition, so you can't use Saint Power and Dao. If you can win 7 consecutive rounds, you can get a sword Dao seed and might even be accepted as a disciple by the City Lord Mansion's experts. What a joke. It's not that easy to win 7 consecutive rounds. Do you see that? That's Zhang Tianchen. He's already a 7th grade half-step Dao Lord. It's said that he's almost able to condense a sword Dao seed. It's not that easy to defeat him. Look, that's the Zhang family's deputy patriarch, Zhang Shang. It's said that he's already a 9th grade half-step Dao Lord, and is only 1 step away from becoming a Dao Lord. Everyone's eyes fell on the old man who was rushing over. Yi Xian knew this person. From Dao Lord Flying Star's memories, he knew that this Zhang Shang was his grandfather. Everyone, the competition is about to begin. Anyone can go on stage to compete. The requirement is that you're a sword cultivator, and you can't use Saint Power or Dao. As long as you can defeat 3 people in a row, you can get a reward. The more consecutive victories, the more generous the reward. Zhang Shang said loudly. Immediately, many people went on stage and began to compete with the youths one after another. These 7 youths of the Zhang family were all sword geniuses. It was not that easy to defeat one of them. However, if one lost in sword techniques, one could rely on one's physique to make up for it. The first 4 youths of the Zhang family were all 5th grade half-step Dao Lords. As long as the challengers were 6th grade half-step Dao Lords, they would have an advantage in terms of physique. Chapter 2023. Begin. At Zhang Shang's command, the two figures in the arena began to move. Clang! 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 A series of crisp sounds rang out. This 6th rank half-step Dao Lord challenger was actually defeated in less than 10 moves by the first genius of the Zhang clan. Although his cultivation level was higher than his opponents, the Zhang clan's genius sword techniques were truly impressive. It wasn't that easy to win the first round. Moreover, the 7 geniuses of the Zhang clan were ranked according to their strength. Next, the second challenger entered the arena and continued his challenge. For people of this level, battles were extremely fast. In just a short while, over 100 challengers had been defeated. Among them, only one person won 3 rounds in a row. Sigh. There aren't any good seedlings in this sword competition. Zhang Shang shook his head as he muttered to himself. But at this moment, a youth walked into the arena. This youth was Yi Xian. Yi Xian took out his sure-kill sword and looked at the first youth. Zhang Shang no longer called for the battle to begin. Once a challenger attacked, the battle would begin. Thus Yi Xian had to attack first. However, Yi Xian, a 4th rank half-step Dao Lord, wasn't favored by anyone. Ta! Yi Xian took a single step forward. In the next instant his speed skyrocketed, and he actually arrived in front of the first genius of the Zhang clan. This speed exceeded everyone's expectations. In the previous battles, Yi Xian had used the Tao of the Inferno and the Tao of the Gale to increase his speed. Now, he was completely relying on his physique. Thus, he activated the slaughter state. Before the genius of the Zhang clan, who was a 5th grade half-step Dao Lord, could react, Yi Xian's sure-kill sword was already pressed against his neck. He won. The entire arena was silent. Oh! Zhang Shang narrowed his eyes in surprise. He didn't expect Yi Xian to be able to challenge a genius of the Zhang clan. This was truly inconceivable. Next up was another 5th rank half-step Dao Lord sword genius. However, he was still insta-killed by Yi Xian. Not only that, but the remaining 2 5th rank half-step Dao Lords also met the same fate. Yi Xian won 4 matches in a row. In the beginning, no one was optimistic about Yi Xian. But now they were all craning their necks to see how many sword Dao geniuses Yi Xian could defeat. However, the first 4 were all 5th rank half-step Dao Lords, while the 5th and 6th were all 6th rank half-step Dao Lords. Could Yi Xian still win? This kid is not bad. He can openly enter the Zhang clan. Zhang Shang thought to himself. At this moment, the 5th battle had already begun. Slaughter mode. Without another word, Yi Xian immediately activated his ultimate move. However, as he could not use his Saint energy, no one could see any changes in him. Clang! 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 A series of crisp sounds rang out. Yi Xian, a mere 4th rank Dao Lord, was actually able to fight against a 6th rank Dao Lord, a genius of the Zhang clan. This was truly inconceivable. This wasn't the main point. The main point was that Yi Xian's sword technique was even more powerful than the 5th Zhang clan genius. Clang! Suddenly a crisp sound rang out. The 5th Zhang clan genius Quasi-Dao Lord soldier suddenly broke. Then Yi Xian pointed his long sword and pressed it against his opponent's neck. This attack surprised Yi Xian because it triggered the one-hit kill effect. Otherwise, the battle would have lasted for a while. Challenger 5 victories. Zhang Shang shouted. At the same time, his gaze fell on Yi Xian. He nodded slightly to express his appreciation. Yi Xian had won 5 battles. If he won one more battle, he could challenge the number 1 genius of the Zhang clan, Zhang Tianqian. As expected, Yi Xian still won the 6th battle. Although he spent a lot of time, it was still a very good result. What a bunch of trash. They can't even deal with a 4th rank half-step Dao Lord. The number 1 genius of the Zhang clan, Zhang Tianqian, snorted coldly in his heart. Yi Xian had won 6 battles. If he won one more battle, he would be able to obtain a sword Dao seed left behind by a deceased ancestor of the Zhang clan. One had to know that the sword competition had been held countless times, but no one had been able to obtain a sword Dao seed yet. Perhaps it would be born today? 7th battle. Zhang Shang shouted. Then Zhang Tianqian went up. Speaking of which, Zhang Tianqian was the younger cousin of Dao Lord Flying Star, Zhang Tianxing. Of course, Jiang Tianqing's talent was much better than Jiang Tianqin's because Jiang Tianqin had yet to condense a sword Dao seed, but Jiang Tianqing had. Yi Xian thought that as long as he obtained this sword Dao seed, his sword Dao seed should be able to improve. Then, his realm would increase as well. However, it would not be that easy to defeat the number one genius of the Jiang clan. Even if the 6 of them attacked together, they would not be a match for Jiang Tianqin alone. Kid, don't think that you're qualified to fight me just because you defeated the 6 of them. You'd better go down obediently, Jiang Tianqin said to Yi Xian. Oh? I'm not qualified. Could it be that the rules have changed and you're the 8th person and not the 7th? Yi Xian raised an eyebrow. Jiang Tianqin narrowed his eyes, knowing that he had said something wrong. Therefore, he did not waste any more time and waited for Yi Xian to attack. Excuse me. After saying that, Yi Xian immediately attacked. He instantly turned into a stream of light and attacked Jiang Tianqin. Jiang Tianqin was the number one genius of the Jiang clan, so his strength was very impressive. In addition, he had been cultivating for countless years, so his sword skills were also unprecedented. There was almost no one in the same generation who could compete with him in sword skills. However, one should not forget that Yi Xian had the bloodline of a sword immortal in his body. Moreover, he also had a sword Dao seed. Although he could not use Dao attacks here, his sword skills were still superior to Jiang Tianqin's. The battle between the two was very intense, but the outcome was not beyond Jiang Shang's expectations. This kid's constitution is superior to Tianqin's. Could it be that he has comprehended a Dao related to strength? Jiang Shang narrowed his eyes. There were a total of 100,000 minor Daos, and many of them were Daos that improved one's physique. Although those who had comprehended these Daos could not use Dao attacks, they still had an advantage in this competition. However, Jiang Shang could also see that Yi Xian's sword skills were superior to Jiang Tianqin's. At this moment, Yi Xian had already defeated Jiang Tianqin's quasi-Dao soldier and placed his one-hit kill sword on Jiang Tianqin's neck. The battle only lasted for 5 seconds, but it was very long for people of this realm. The challenger wins. When this announcement was made, the entire crowd was in an uproar. After so many years, there was finally a challenger with 7 consecutive victories in the sword competition. However, some people began to suspect that Yi Xian was an actor hired by the Jiang clan. However, there was no need to register for the challenge and there was no fee. What was the use of hiring an actor? Chapter 2024. Jiang Tianqin was stunned when he heard this. He could not believe that he, the top genius of the Jiang clan, was defeated by a 4th-grade half-step Dao lord. I'm going to kill you. Jiang Tianqin shouted angrily and attacked Yi Xian. How dare you? Seeing this, Jiang Shang immediately flashed in front of Yi Xian and sent Jiang Tianqin flying with a slap. Jiang Tianqin was his grandson, but Yi Xian had one. If he was killed by Jiang Tianqin, what would people think of the Jiang clan? After being slapped away by his grandfather, Jiang Tianqin calmed down and glared at Yi Xian. If he fought with his full strength, he could kill Yi Xian with a single strike. Unfortunately, this was a sword fight and he could not use his saint power or Dao. Young man, what's your name? Jiang Shang asked. I'm Yi Xian. Yi Xian replied. Very good. Here's your reward. Jiang Shang did not waste time and took out a sword-type Dao seed from his interspatial ring. Everyone's eyes widened when they saw the sword-type Dao seed. The sword-type Dao seed was one of the best among the 9 sacred Dao seeds. Even if it was only at the early stage of the initial condensation realm, it was enough to defeat a late-stage initial condensation realm cultivator. Yi Xian took the sword-type Dao seed and studied it carefully. This sword-type Dao seed was at the mid-stage of greater mastery, which meant that its owner was an 8th-grade half-step Dao lord when he was alive. Yi Xian estimated that if he devoured this sword-type Dao seed, he would be able to break through at least once or twice. At this moment, Jiang Shang said, Yi Xian, are you willing to be my disciple? Everyone was in an uproar when they heard this. Jiang Shang was the vice-patriarch of the Jiang clan, which meant that he was the vice-city lord. Being his disciple would be a meteoric rise. After hearing this, Yi Xian quickly pondered for a moment. Jiang Feixing was Jiang Shang's grandson. If he could get in touch with him, it would be much easier to fulfill Jiang Feixing's wish. Greetings, master. Yi Xian cupped his fists without hesitation. Good, very good. Jiang Shang nodded in satisfaction. Yixian's aptitude was even higher than Jiang Tianqin's. If he was nurtured, his battle prowess would not be low. Jiang Tianqin was gritting his teeth in anger. He was Jiang Shang's grandson, and Yixian was now Jiang Shang's disciple. This meant that Yixian was one generation above him. Henceforth, when he saw Yixian, wouldn't he have to salute him? No! Jiang Tianqin bellowed furiously. Hearing this, Jiang Shang turned his head strangely and asked, "Why not? Grandpa, I thought you never accepted disciples?" Jiang Tianqin immediately asked. "With such a good seedling, why can't we break the rules? You, on the other hand, should learn how to behave properly." Jiang Shang's eyes flickered. Although Jiang Tianqin was his grandson and the one with the best aptitude, the former's character was really not good, so he didn't like Jiang Tianqin very much. "Old thing, how dare you criticize me in front of so many people? Am I still your grandson?" Jiang Tianqin cursed in his heart. The sword competition was over, and the Jiang family had another genius, Yixian. Then Yixian left with Jiang Shang and went to the city lord mansion. "Yixian, you will live here from now on. Go and comprehend the sword Dao seed. If there's anything you don't understand, come and ask me." Jiang Shang said to Yixian. "Yes, master." Yixian nodded. At this moment he was thinking about one thing, and that was whether or not he should tell Jiang Shang about Jiang Feixing. However, after thinking about it, he decided not to. Then Jiang Shang left. After he left, Yixian randomly found a servant of the Jiang family and forcefully searched his soul. "I see. The matter of Jiang Feixing stealing the death sword is a big taboo in the Jiang family. No one is allowed to mention this matter. Jiang Feixing's father died early, and after Jiang Feixing stole the death sword, his mother committed suicide as an apology. Now, she is buried outside Spiritual Light Sword City." Yixian's eyes narrowed. In that case, it would be better to bury Jiang Feixing's body with his mother first. Yixian immediately left the city lord mansion and went out of the city. Previously, Jiang Feixing's last wish was to be buried with his mother's body. However, because he stole the death sword, his mother's body was not placed in the family's ancestral hall. Therefore, Yixian wanted to bury Jiang Feixing's body first, and let the Jiang family move their bodies back in the future. As for how to make the Jiang family do that, it was needless to say. It was to use force. However, when Yixian left the city lord mansion, someone suddenly followed him. He asked Wei Zhentian to look back and found that it was actually Jiang Shang's grandson, Jiang Tianqin. "This guy followed me after losing to me. Is he trying to teach me a lesson or kill me?" Yixian narrowed his eyes as he thought to himself. However, he did not turn his head and continued to hurry on his way. After a while, Jiang Tianqin caught up with him. "Stop right there!" Jiang Tianqin shouted angrily. Yixian stopped when he heard that. "Oh, it's you. What's the matter?" Yixian asked with a smile. Jiang Tianqin went straight to the point and said, "Put away that face of yours and hand over the sword path seed. Then get the hell away from me. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." "So you're here for the sword Dao seed. Why? Is everyone in the Jiang family a sore loser?" Yixian couldn't help but mock. "Cut the crap. I'll give you 3 seconds to hand over the sword Dao seed. Otherwise die." Jiang Tianqin's eyes flashed with killing intent. "Is that so?" Yixian's lips curled up slightly. He took off the yin and yang ring in his hand and said, "Come and get it yourself if you can. How dare you provoke me as a mere rank 4 half-step Dao Lord? Don't think you can be so arrogant just because you're better than me in swordsmanship. Today, I'll show you that there's always someone better than you." As soon as Jiang Tianqin finished speaking, he transformed into a streak of light and charged towards Yixian. "Who said I'm a rank 4 half-step Dao Lord?" Yixian sneered. His aura suddenly skyrocketed. "A rank 4 half-step Dao Lord? No." Yixian's aura was already that of a rank 6 half-step Dao Lord. This was because he had devoured the mid-mastery sword Dao seed and raised it to late minor mastery. Flying Star Sword Art. Chain of 9 stars. Yixian's right hand stabbed out 9 times in an instant. It was a combination of various Dao attacks. Its power was truly terrifying, and it easily defeated Jiang Tianqin's attack before piercing through his head. "Pooh!" A muffled sound rang out. Then Jiang Tianqin's body fell to the ground. He was dead. "I'm not the one who overestimated myself. Yixian shook his head and hurriedly collected Jiang Tianqin's corpse. Chapter 2025. Then Yixian swallowed Jiang Tianqin's corpse with the mask of illusion and turned into Jiang Tianqin. He then read Jiang Tianqin's memories. However, Yixian was shocked the next moment because he learned a secret. There's a Tao seed of death inside the death sword? Yixian widened his eyes in disbelief. The Tao of death was not ranked lower than the Tao of sword among the 9 sacred Taos. If one could comprehend the Tao of death, one's combat strength would increase greatly. The death sword was made from a Tao seed. No wonder it was so powerful. That was not the point. The point was that there was another Tao weapon made from a Tao seed called the life sword. The life sword and the death sword were a pair called the life and death sword. They were the Jiang family's heirloom. But the life sword was lost in an accident. The life sword has the ability to bring people back to life? Yixian was shocked. The Tao seed in the life sword was called the life Tao seed. The life Tao was also one of the top Taos among the 9 sacred Taos. The Jiang family had once used the life sword to bring people back to life. The Tao of life and the Tao of death are too terrifying. Yixian shivered. At this moment he was thinking if he obtained the life sword, then wouldn't he be able to revive Tao Lord Flying Star and his mother? Not only that, but he could also revive many people. Although the life sword is lost, the Jiang family has a sword-searching technique. As long as I use the death sword, I can find the life sword. At that thought, Yixian immediately set off and arrived at the burial place of Jiang Feixing's mother in a short while. Then, he simply put away the corpse of Jiang Feixing's mother. At this level, it was easy to prevent the body from decaying. Therefore, Yixian felt that Jiang Feixing's mother could be revived. Then, he turned into Jiang Tianqin and returned to the Jiang family. There was a sword-searching technique in the Jiang family's martial arts library, so Yixian immediately went in. As the grandson of the deputy patriarch and the number 1 genius of the Jiang family, Jiang Tianqin had the authority to do so. Yixian went straight to the top floor and searched for a while. As expected, he found the sword-searching technique and copied it down. Then, he left the city lord mansion again. Now that I have the sword-searching technique and I have the death sword, I should be able to find my way. Yixian's eyes narrowed slightly and took out the death sword. Whoosh! After Yixian used the sword-seeking technique, the death sword pointed to the north. In the north? Yixian muttered as he immediately returned to the spiritual light sword city and teleported to a city in the north. Following that, he used it again, but the death sword's sword tip was still pointing towards the north. Even further north. Yixian continued the teleportation. He was. After Yixian's Feng. This meant that his teleportation had surpassed the location of the life sword. However, this was already several days later. Yixian cursed angrily. Fortunately, he was about to find it. Between these 2 cities there are 4 more cities. I need to narrow down the range. Yixian continued the teleportation and finally locked onto the 2 cities. The life sword was somewhere in the middle of these 2 cities. He left immediately and traveled on his own. However, with his realm, it took him more than 10 days to finally lock onto a place. This place was a large forest. There were huge trees inside, and from time to time there would be rich life energy floating out. Under normal circumstances, a place like this would have heaven and earth treasures. Yixian sent the sword immortal clone, the old tree, and Black Horn in to check. The level of this area was not low. He had already passed by several cities with Tao Lord experts. With his strength he might be in danger. However, after hesitating for a moment, he decided to go in together. After all, he could use the time reversal skill now. This forest looked a little strange. What Yixian did not know was that this forest full of life energy was called the Forest of Death. None of those who entered would leave alive. Yixian entered. At first nothing happened, but soon he heard several system notifications. Ding! Devouring Black Scale Dragon is dead. Ding! Devouring Unicorn is dead. Ding! Devouring Black Scale Dragon is resurrected. Ding! Devouring Unicorn is resurrected. By the time he reacted, he saw the sword immortal avatar in the darkness. What's going on? Yixian raised his eyebrows. At this time, a bloody mouth suddenly opened and directly swallowed him. The sword immortal clone was swallowed because he was paying attention to his surroundings. However, this time he saw that the thing that swallowed him was a huge flower. The piranha flower. At this moment, Yi Xian was already in the mouth of the piranha flower. The corrosive liquid dripped down and penetrated the void spirit divine armor. F***CK. Yi Xian was shocked and quickly attacked. However, the piranha flower's defense was so strong that his attack could not break it. I don't believe it. He widened his eyes, took out the death sword and slashed fiercely. This time it broke. The aura of death spread, and the piranha flower immediately decayed. It turned out that this was the danger of this forest. Humph, watch me burn all of you. Yi Xian widened his eyes, held the death sword, and began to attack crazily. The level of these piranha flowers was probably not low. Although they were not at the Downlord level, they were only at the 8th or 9th grade half-step Downlord level. However, those who were attacked by the death sword all decayed. Yi Xian began to sweep crazily. Wherever he passed, all the flowers and trees withered. During this time, Yi Xian even used the sword-seeking technique to check the location of the life sword, and then killed his way over. However, this forest was boundless. He killed for a full 3 days, but he still did not reach the end. At this moment, what a big tree! Yi Xian was shocked. This tree was probably tens of thousands of meters tall and extremely thick. This was not the main point. The main point was that this tree was emitting a strong aura of life. Yi Xian stood there, feeling that he was in high spirits and that his lifespan had increased. However, at this moment, there were black shadows swimming around the tree. He took a closer look and realized that they were mosquitoes. This group of mosquitoes is absorbing the life essence of this tree. Yi Xian secretly said in his heart, but did not pay much attention to it. He just quietly went around. However, after he went around the tree for a while, he realized that the death sword's direction had deviated. Chapter 2026. After some thought, Yi Xian decided to send out the 3 sword immortal clones. As expected, the moment they approached, they were attacked by the large mosquitoes. 9-layer heaven devouring flames. Old Tree used his ultimate move and burned the large group of mosquitoes to ashes. However, there were simply too many mosquitoes to count. There was no way to kill them all. Hence, Blackhorn and Old Tree were exhausted to death. Fortunately, the sword immortal clones did not disappoint Yi Xian, and were still standing strong. These mosquitoes could not hurt him at all. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly realized something. After the mosquitoes were killed, the life aura in their bodies would gather and flow into the distance. Yi Xian frowned and sent the sword immortal clones to check it out. When the sword immortal clones arrived, they saw a huge altar. On the altar there was a crystal bottle. The life aura was flowing into the crystal bottle. The sword immortal clones went over to take a look. Just as he was about to put away the crystal bottle, an aura suddenly descended. Who is it? A shout made the sword immortal clone stop. He turned around and saw a long-haired youth standing in the air, looking down at him. This long-haired youth was wearing a green robe and was a 9th grade half-step Dao Lord. Who are you? The sword immortal clones asked. However, the other party did not answer the question. Instead, he attacked. Boom! The sword immortal clones attacked at the same time. The two energies collided and were evenly matched. You're courting death. The long-haired youth narrowed his eyes and immediately fought the sword immortal clones. Immediately, Yi Xian hurriedly rushed over as well, resulting in a 4 versus 1 situation. In a 1-on-1 situation, the sword immortal clones could not do anything to the long-haired youth. However, in a 4-on-1 situation it was more than enough to deal with him. Bastard! The long-haired youth cursed. However, in the next moment, his chest was pierced by Yi Xian. Ding! Host's killing intent has increased. A system notification sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Yi Xian quickly collected the corpse and began to search its soul. It turned out that this long-haired youth was a disciple of the Great Wood Dojo. He was the one who created this area. His purpose was to attract others to enter, and then let those man-eating flowers devour the flesh and blood, and then transfer the essence to the giant tree of life. Then, the large mosquitoes absorbed the life essence into the bottle. These life essences would ultimately be absorbed by the long-haired youth. What? He actually has a Tao seed of life in his body? Yixian was shocked. This life Dao seed was formed by the long-haired youth devouring a large amount of life essence. Now, he was using the life essence to improve his life Dao seed. The seed of life was even more precious than the sword Wei. It was ranked higher among the 99 saintly paths. Who would have thought that this Jumu dojo actually had a Wei? How amazing! However, this method was somewhat inhumane. After all, this life Dao seed was formed from the accumulation of countless human lives. Yixian did not care about anything else. He directly devoured this Dao seed of life. Then, he used his devouring Dao seed to devour the other Dao seeds of the young man. However, he could not break through. However, Yixian found something useful from his memories. The long-haired youth had obtained the life sword by chance and planted it on the ground. Simply put, the life sword was under the giant tree of life. Yixian hurried over and had Wei Zhentian transform into the beast god Bell to suppress it. Then he killed all the mosquitoes. He now had a Dao seed of life. He placed his hand on the giant tree of life and began to absorb the life essence. This giant tree of life was the root of the entire forest. Simply put, the entire forest was actually a single entity. Yixian continued to absorb the life essence. The Dao seed of life that he had just obtained began to improve from the early stage of small success to the early stage of greater success. Ding! The Dao seed of life has improved to the early stage of greater success. Ding! The host has broken through. The host is currently a 7th rank half-step Dao Lord. By the time the 2 system notifications rang out, the entire forest had already withered. Originally, the long-haired youth had used this forest to lure others in, and then turned it into life essence for himself to absorb. This was supposed to be an endless cycle. However, Yixian had absorbed all of the giant tree of life's essence, so he could not continue. Then, Yixian began to dig and retrieve the life sword that was hidden underground. The life sword of life and death was finally gathered. Originally, creating a forest like this would require a large amount of natural treasures. However, the long-haired youth just happened to obtain the life sword, so he saved a lot of money. Yixian thought to himself and took out the death sword. These 2 Dao weapons were formed from Dao seeds. If he destroyed these 2 Dao weapons, he would obtain a Dao seed of life and a Dao seed of death. However, Dao weapons were Dao Lord level weapons. How could he destroy them now? Given my current realm, I should be able to revive Zhang Feixing and his mother. Yixian thought to himself. However, what he did not know was that the news of the long-haired youth's death had already spread to the Great Wood Dojo. He immediately took out Zhang Feixing's corpse and used the death sword to absorb the death qi. Then he used the life sword to inject the life sword with life qi. After a while, the originally dead Zhang Feixing came back to life. This is... Zhang Feixing opened his eyes. He had been constantly using the death sword to fight, so he was contaminated with the death qi. In the end, he could only build his own tomb. How did he suddenly come back to life? Could it be that he was refined into a vicious battle corpse or puppet? Senior, we meet again, Yixian said with a smile. You are... Zhang Feixing was confused. After all, he had died long ago. Previously, it was his remnant soul that communicated with Yixian, so it was normal that he did not recognize Yixian. Yixian told him what had happened. After listening to him, Zhang Feixing was dumbfounded. You found the life sword? Zhang Feixing was shocked. One had to know that the Zhang family's patriarch had gone to find the life sword and came to this forest of death. However, he could not enter, so he could only give up. He did not expect that Yixian, a half-step Dao Lord, could do it. However, Yixian was able to enter thanks to the Sword Immortal Clone, the Death Sword, and the Void Spirit Divine Armor. Of course, there was also the time reversal. After entering this forest of death, he had been constantly using time reversal to find low-risk places. Senior, your mother's corpse is also with me. I can also revive her, Yixian said. What? Zhang Feixing was shocked again and hurriedly said, Quick, revive my mother. Okay. Yixian said nothing and took out Zhang Feixing's mother's corpse. Chapter 2027. It just so happened that Yixian was already a 7th stage half-step Dao Lord, so he could revive Zhang Fei's mother, who was also a 7th stage half-step Dao Lord. The Death Sword extracted death energy, and the Life Sword injected life energy. Before long, Zhang Fei's mother opened her eyes. Mother! Zhang Feixing couldn't help but shout. Not long after he stole the death sword and left, he heard that his mother had committed suicide. He was so heartbroken that he even thought of suicide several times. However, later on, he heard that the life sword had the ability to revive the dead, so he wanted to find it. Unexpectedly, he used the death sword too much and was tainted with death energy, which led to her death. Yi Xian had actually been tainted by the aura of death, but the bloodline in his body could suppress it. Moreover, after obtaining the life Dao seed, the aura of death had completely disappeared. Xing'e, Zhang Feixing's mother, was shocked. Then, Yi Xian directly put the two of them into the devouring space, so that they could be reunited. As for him, he prepared to return to spiritual light sword city. Yi Xian, my father died in a great battle. Can you? Zhang Tianxing suddenly asked. 8th stage half-step Dao Lord. With my current realm, I don't know if I can succeed, but as long as I break through again, it should be possible. Yi Xian replied. Thank you in advance. Zhang Tianxing thanked him. After a person died, their soul would gradually dissipate, but it was only an illusory soul that dissipated. In a person's brain there was a physical soul. Yi Xian used the life sword and the death sword to revive the two of them. In fact, he used the death sword to absorb the death energy, and used the life sword to revive the soul in the brain, giving birth to a new soul. Therefore, the life sword alone couldn't revive people unless it could remove the death energy. Speaking of which, on the way here, Yi Xian kept leaving void tracking points, so it was very easy for him to return to spiritual light sword city. After a while he returned. Then he directly went to find Zhang Sheng. According to Zhang Tianxing, his grandfather Zhang Sheng was very good to him. Back then he stole the death sword, so he felt very guilty toward Zhang Sheng. At this time, Yi Xian had already returned to the city lord's mansion. Master, are you there? Yi Xian sent a voice transmission to Zhang Sheng. Come here. In the next moment, Yi Xian appeared outside Zhang Sheng's mansion. What's the matter? Zhang Sheng turned to look at Yi Xian. Master, I have something to tell you next. I hope you won't be too surprised. Yi Xian said. Haha, this old man is also a person who has experienced great storms and waves. There aren't many things that can surprise this old man. Zhang Sheng laughed loudly. But in the next moment his said Zhang's right was that? Zhang Xian's master's master, Zhang Feixing, is here. And Zhang Feixing was Zhang. Dao Lord. When Zhang Sheng heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then he saw two very familiar people. Said Yifang Zhang was Zhang Yizhang's grandson. Said Kuden Zhang, yes he. Teet her of S of ts twos long tsts committed a families of a of course of. How did she come back to life? Grandpa, mother and I were both dead, but Yi Xian found the life sword and brought us back to life, said Zhang Feixing. When he heard this, Zhang Sheng was shocked again. The life sword? How was that possible? One must know that the place where the life sword was located was an extremely dangerous place. Zhang Sheng's father, the old master of the Zhang family, had led a team there, but half of them died in the end. Now Zhang Feixing said that the life sword was found by Yi Xian, a half-step Dao Lord. How was that possible? Yi Xian took out the life sword and death sword and told Zhang Sheng what had happened. Disciple, thank you. Thank you for bringing the life sword back. Zhang Sheng shed tears of gratitude. However, Yi Xian shook his head and said, Master, you misunderstand. I didn't find it for you. I need it for myself. This? Zhang Sheng was stunned. Also, I only joined the Zhang family to investigate some things. So, from now on I am no longer your disciple. Yi Xian's expression suddenly turned serious. With his strength, Zhang Sheng was not qualified to be his master. Yi Xian, this? Zhang Feixing suddenly spoke, but he did not know how to continue. Previously, he had given the death sword to Yi Xian, hoping that Yi Xian could bring his body and the death sword back to the Zhang family. Now Yi Xian said that he needed the death sword. What should he do? After all, Yi Xian had found the life sword and brought him and his mother back to life. If he asked Yi Xian to return the life sword, he would be ungrateful. Don't worry. I'm just borrowing the life sword. I'll return it in the future. However, I can bring the dead Zhang family members back to life, but I need some Dao seeds as a reward, Yi Xian said. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire crowd fell silent. This? Zhang Sheng hesitated. In fact, he wanted to hide Zhang Feixing and Wen Kuang. After all, Zhang Feixing was a sinner of the Zhang family. However, Yi Xian had brought back the death sword and the life sword. If Yi Xian could return the life sword to the Zhang family, then Zhang Feixing would have redeemed himself. It would be a happy ending. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not intend to return the life sword. What kind of Dao seed do you need? Zhang Sheng asked. It's best if it's a high-grade Inferno Dao seed. Of course, I don't care about anything else. However, I want a large amount, Yi Xian said. This request of his made the three of them somewhat puzzled. He only needed one Dao seed to comprehend. Why did he need so many Dao seeds? One had to know that the more Dao seeds one condensed, the harder it was to condense them. In the half-step Dao Lord realm, condensing 2 Dao seeds was already good enough. It was rare to see 3. I'll use the life sword to bring your family members back to life. I only want Dao seeds as a reward. This isn't too much, right? Yi Xian asked again. Indeed, it's not too much. However, I have to discuss this with the others, Zhang Sheng said. He was only the deputy patriarch of the Zhang family. The patriarch was his brother. In addition, his father was also in charge. This kind of thing still needs to be discussed. All right, no problem. Yi Xian nodded and put away the life sword. Then Zhang Sheng quickly left with Zhang Feixing and Wen Kuang. The Zhang family members did not know that Zhang Feixing had died once. However, many of them had seen Wen Kuang's corpse with their own eyes. Now that Wen Kuang had been resurrected and Zhang Sheng had seen it with his own eyes, it should not be difficult to convince the Zhang family members. Sure enough, a large group of people soon arrived. Chapter 2028. Old ancestor? Oh my God, why is the old ancestor here? Wasn't he in seclusion with the patriarch? The patriarch is here, and so is the deputy patriarch. What happened? The people from the Zhang family all revealed puzzled expressions. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in Zhang Sheng's courtyard, saw the group of Zhang family's upper echelons summon the sword of life and death. The leading white-haired elder snorted coldly. According to Zhang Tianxin's memories, Yi Xian recognized this person as the Zhang family's old ancestor Zhang Lingguang. Zhang Lingguang was a half-step Dao lord and a sword cultivator. He had a Dao seed of the sword in his body, and it had been raised to late-stage greater mastery. He was only one step away from the great Dao, and his combat strength was terrifying. Senior, there's no need to be angry. I'm just borrowing the sword of life and death. Yi Xian smiled and said slowly. How dare you? The sword of life and death belongs to our Zhang family. How can you just borrow it? Another elder shouted angrily. He was the Zhang family's patriarch and Zhang Sheng's elder brother, Zhang Yong. Both Zhang Lingguang and Zhang Yong had more power than Zhang Sheng, so Zhang Sheng could do nothing. Yi Xian, you better hand over the sword of life and death, Zhang Sheng said helplessly. He had told his elder brother and father what had happened, but when they found out that the sword of life and death had been found, they had rushed over aggressively. He couldn't stop them. That won't do. Although the sword of life and death belongs to your Zhang family, I didn't take it away from you. Besides, I didn't say that I wouldn't return it. I'm just borrowing it temporarily. Yi Xian shrugged with a smile on his face. The sword does belong to you, but I'm borrowing it by force. So what? Fine. Then I'd like to see what kind of ability you have to dare to borrow my Zhang family's sword of life and death. Zhang Yong attacked Yi Xian without hesitation, wanting to capture Yi Xian. That way, the sword of life and death would be in his hands. There was no need to talk nonsense. Big brother. Seeing this, Zhang Sheng wanted to make a move, but was stopped by Zhang Lingguang. Helpless, he could only watch as Zhang Yong flashed in front of Yi Xian and slapped Yi Xian on the shoulder. However, Yi Xian remained unmoved in the face of this palm. How is that possible? Zhang Yong was shocked. He was a 9th-rank half-step Dao Lord. How could he not be able to deal with a 7th-rank half-step Dao Lord? Hee. Yi Xian grinned. What a joke. The one who had come to the Zhang family was not his true body, but his sword immortal clone. What's more, he was currently a 7th-rank half-step Dao Lord. Zhang Yong was only 2 ranks higher than him. Yet he wanted to capture him? Zhang Yong refused to believe it as he immediately extended his hand towards the interspatial ring on the Sword Immortal Avatar's hand. However, the Sword Immortal Avatar immediately kept the interspatial ring and held it in his hand. If you want to completely lose the Sword of Life and Death, then continue. As soon as Yixian finished speaking, Zhang Yong no longer dared to move. If the Cosmos Ring was broken, the Sword of Life and Death would disappear. No one knew where it would appear. Stop! Zhang Lingguang could no longer watch and immediately shouted. Senior, do you have something to say? Yixian said with a faint smile. As a junior, you're the first one who dares to threaten me in such a situation. Zhang Lingguang narrowed his eyes and said, then let's both take a step back. Return the Sword of Life and Death to me, and I'll let bygones be bygones. Not only that, but I'll also pretend that Zhang Fei stole the Sword of Life and Death never happened. What do you think? Senior, you're really old. I just said that I want to borrow the Sword of Life and Death. Did you not hear me clearly? Yixian said. You're courting death. Zhang Lingguang opened his eyes wide and looked like he was about to attack. However, if he attacked, he had to succeed. Otherwise, the Sword of Life and Death would really be gone. I heard that Senior brought people into the Forest of Death and returned empty-handed. Instead, many experts died. However, I was able to go through the entire Forest of Death and bring back the Sword of Life and Death. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Yixian's face suddenly turned cold. As soon as he said that, everyone present fell silent. What was Yixian's background? How did he accomplish something that even the former family head could not? That was what everyone was thinking. However, Zhang Lingguang, who was already a Dao Lord, still did not take Yixian seriously. No matter who you are, as long as you return the Sword of Life and Death to my Zhang family will treat you as an important guest. Otherwise, even if I die, I'll take back the Sword of Life and Death. Zhang Lingguang threatened again. Hearing that, Yixian could only helplessly shake his head and said, since Senior is unwilling to make this deal with me, then let's fight to the death. After saying that, he clenched the interspatial ring tightly and tried to crush it. Wait! Zhang Lingguang was frightened. He did not expect Yixian to be so unafraid of death. He paused for a moment and said, we'll talk about it in 3 days. Alright, then I'll give you 3 days to prepare enough Dao seeds. Who knows, I might return the Sword of Life and Death to you in 3 days. Yixian smiled, then sat down and closed his eyes to rest. When everyone saw this, they were shocked. Facing a Dao Lord, Yixian sat down so defenselessly. He must have some kind of confidence. Otherwise, how could a 7th stage half-step Dao Lord threaten the Zhang family, which had a Dao Lord overseeing it? Following that, Zhang Lingguang ordered his men to guard the courtyard strictly. To be precise, they were to keep an eye on Yixian and not let Yixian escape. As for Zhang Lingguang himself, he hid in the surroundings and waited for an opportunity to make a move. As long as he obtained Yixian's interspatial ring, the matter would be over. He did not care about Yixian's life or death. Unfortunately, after 3 days, Yixian still sat cross-legged on the ground and did not even open his eyes. This really shocked Zhang Lingguang and the rest of the Zhang family. 3 days later. Senior, how's the preparation? At this moment, Yixian suddenly spoke. It's ready, but you have to revive the dead members of the Zhang family first. Zhang Lingguang appeared out of nowhere. No way. Yixian stood up and said slowly. Zhang Lingguang gritted his teeth in anger and threw an interspatial ring over. It was filled with a large number of Dao seeds. Among them were the Dao seeds left behind by the dead members of the Zhang family, as well as the spoils of war that the Zhang family obtained from killing enemies. Of course, most of them were purchased in the past 3 days. After Yixian received the interspatial ring, he grinned and said, Thank you, Senior. The number of Dao seeds in this interspatial ring was truly shocking.